Good afternoon, everyone. It's September 11th, 2025. I'm going to call the business meeting of the South Florida Water Management District to order. First on the agenda always is the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Hurley, would you like to lead us in the pledge? If you all could stand and face the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Mr. Hurley. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to recognize that today is a day of remembrance for the lives lost in the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001. We honor the bravery of our first responders, the sacrifice of our service members, the resilience shown by families and communities across our nation. I'd also like to pay my respects to the family of Charlie Kirk, who was senselessly murdered yesterday. My thoughts, and more importantly, my prayers, are with his wife, Erica, and their 2 children. Would you please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you. Vice Chair Wagner's not going to be joining us today. Mr. Martinez and Colonel Roman are participating remotely. Colonel Roman, are you there?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair.
Great. And Mr. Martinez, are you on yet? We'll give him a chance to get on. For those board members who are here, I'm going to ask that you make sure your microphone is on and that you please speak into the mic so the online attendees can hear you. And if you turn your head while you're speaking, drag the mic with you. For those board members who are on Zoom, I can't see you when you raise your hand, so if you want to speak or ask a question, please call out your name and I'll acknowledge you. Members of the public on Zoom who wish to address the board may use the raise your hand feature. If members of the public are having any trouble and need help, please go to our website, sfwnd.gov, and click the Ask Us button and we'll help you out. If you're using a phone and you'd like to comment, please press star 9 to raise your hand and star 6 to mute and unmute. As a courtesy to others who wish to speak, members of the public are asked to comment only once on each topic. We'll take public comment from those who are here in person first, and they submit a comment card for that, followed by those who have raised their hands on Zoom. After today's business meeting, we're going to host a public hearing on fiscal year 25-26 tentative ad valorem millage rates, non-ad valorem tax rolls, and tentative budget at exactly 5:15. The Zoom meeting link will remain the same for that meeting. Board members, please be advised that we cannot start the budget hearing early or late. And now we're going to move to employee recognitions. If you could all join me in the well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So our September 2025 Employee of the Month is Chris Tomlin, Instrumentation Control Tech at the Okeechobee Field Station. So our instrumentation, our control techs for these instruments are critical, like most of our jobs at the Water Management District. It's critical to implement our mission. Because they deal with the complex electrical and electronic instruments and devices that operate all of our controls, all of our measurements across the system. They must install, calibrate, repair, and automate all these systems. And if they don't work, we don't work. It's how we communicate from down the hall out across the South Florida Water Management District. But Chris is a leader in this area, and he's a leader at the Okeechobee Field Station, and he brings it across the district. One of the things he did for us was he improved our policies and procedures and practices around our lockout and tagout procedures with instrumentation control. These are electronics, right? So they can be dangerous, and so it is important and imperative that we have safety in our minds as we're doing the repairs, maintenance, replacement activities with these instruments. And Chris took it upon himself to lead an effort to get us into a safer place. He brings that kind of leadership because he has that kind of expertise. And he is very much engaged in all of our design of our new projects and all of our upgrade of our electrical equipment across the Water Management District. He's been engaged in the reservoirs and stormwater treatment areas for the C23 and 24 projects, the ASR wells, the Grassy Island telemetry towers, the S457 pump station, the boat locks on the northern part of the lakes, the North Shore pump stations, just reading a huge list here, boat locks and design, and basically all the control panel upgrades across the North Shore. He's like that guy in the Okeechobee Field Station that makes all of this happen. And if he didn't make it happen, it ain't happening, right? We're not opening those gates. We're not opening those locks. So we're very grateful for Chris, because not only did he bring his expertise to get the job done across all these areas, but he also brought the leadership to help everyone in the field do it safely with respect to the electronics. So Chris, that's why you're our Employee of the Month, and congratulations. We are not done with our Okeechobee Field Station today. Our September 2025 Team of the Month is the Okeechobee Field Station Structure Team, which consists of Carl Baker, Chad Burnsed, Jeffrey Emick, Ronald Farmer, Gregory Hoyle, John Hicks, Junior John Pierre, Brody Lamb, Cody McElroy, John Moody, Robert Rhymes, Tyler Sisson, Charles Smith, and Rocky Wise. So we've got a huge flood control system in the South Florida Water Management District, over 2,100 miles of canals and berms, 936 water control structures, 620 project culverts, 98 pump stations. There's going to be a quiz later, and that all have to be taken care of. And the thing is, a lot of these structures are old, right? And we've talked about it. Many of them are 50-plus years old, and they need to be maintained, and sometimes they need to be refurbished and completely rebuilt, right? And so this team is responsible for gate overhauls, and they are out doing three gate overhauls at the S68A, S84A, and S65D structures, which is basically a gate refurbishment, right? But there was more problems they identified at these three structures with respect to the concrete. And as we've talked about, concrete and water doesn't last forever, and it's certainly not lasting forever in our water management district. But what they did was they saw that this concrete needed basically to be rebuilt, and they also learned from the S71 structure, where we had a contractor out there that did it themselves under contract, and they took the lessons from that other structure and said, hey, we could probably do these three structures and pour this concrete and rebuild them ourselves. And so that's what they set out to do. And so they got the job done themselves. We didn't have to go through the procurement process to bring a third-party contractor on, and we ended up saving hundreds of thousands of dollars in this effort, which is, not only did we get the job done, which was job number one, but we saved money doing it. And if it weren't for the leadership and just steadfastness and just go get it done attitude of this team, that wouldn't have happened. So we're very grateful for what they did for us. We're grateful that the structures are done. I know Ben is grateful for S65D being rebuilt, and that's why they're our team of employees. Team of the Month.
All the way around and figure out that stuff.
They're trying to make jokes. All right, we have a 25-year service award for Chad Birchka, Lead Water Supply Plan Manager. So Chad has been with us for 25 years. He came to us in 2000. He went into water supply regulation. And he immediately showed his leadership capabilities. And then from there, he basically, for the last 25 years, he's been promoted about 8 times. And now he is a lead water supply plan manager for our water supply group. So he is the lead for the Lower Kissimmee Basin Water Supply Plan and the Upper East Coast Water Supply Plan. And so 2 critical plans that we have, and he has been engaged in water supply, obviously, for 25 years, but he knows intimately how kind of constrained we are from a water supply standpoint in the South Florida Water Management District. And so as he's been implementing these water supply plans, he's also been jumping into all the alternative water supply development and how are we going to sustain our growth and how are we going to plan for the future. And so he's gotten to know all these utilities, right? He's gotten to know them. He's gotten to know what their past has been, how they've tried to tackle their future. And therefore, he's been very much engaged not only in the water supply planning, but also in the alternative water supply program, where he collects all the information. He maintains a database of all these utilities. When we get those water supply plans and those submissions from the utilities, they're not all consistent. They're kind of all over the place. So he's had to develop those relationships with these utilities to get the data and information right. Because every single year, the South Florida Water Management District has to report all this to the state, and it gets rolled up into an alternative water supply and reuse report for our state. So he's engaged, he knows all these folks, he's kind of a historian when it comes to water supply in South Florida, and therefore he takes all that knowledge and he brings it to all parts of the Water Management District, including our CERT projects, where he's helping us with savings clause analysis and those kind of things. He's one of those people that just is an amazing asset. We can send him out to any utility, he knows what's going on, and he knows how to speak and work and manage across the spectrum when it comes to water supply planning. So that database he maintains, it's going to be there for the future. It's the one that we turn to all the time when reporting to the state. So he also has a conservation ethic. So when you're in water supply and you have a conservation ethic, that's a pretty good pairing. So he spends a lot of his time hiking, mountain biking, surfing, paddleboarding with his 2 young daughters. Sounds like a lot of fun, and but he doesn't have near as much fun doing that as he does doing water supply plans, I'm told. So, Chad, thank you so much for your 25 years of service.
Well, thanks, Drew. We'll go now to agenda revisions. Are there any agenda changes to the agenda, Molly?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Agenda item number 31 was added to the consent agenda.
Thank you. Now we'll go to abstentions by board members. So I'll start at my right and see if any board member has any abstentions. Mr. Spotswood?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Bergeron?
No.
Thanks. Mr. Steinley? I have none. Mr. Butler?
I have none.
Mr. Hurley?
I don't have any.
Thanks. Colonel Roman?
I have none.
Thank you. And Mr. Martinez?
None, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Charlie. Welcome. We'll go now to the Big Cypress Basin Board Report with the Chair of the Big Cypress Basin, Charlotte Roman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the board report for the August 22nd meeting. The meeting began with a report by the Basin Administrator, Lisa Keeler, who provided an overview of several key capital projects. She also provided updates on 3 agreements with partnering agencies and provided the save-the-date information for our upcoming coastal and canal cleanup within the basin. We had a presentation from Katie Lockinen from the City of Naples on the Oyster Reef Restoration Project in Naples Bay. The Big Cypress Basin approved funding in the amount of $110,000 for an oyster habitat restoration project in 2023. In the spring of 2024, the City of Naples completed the construction of 6 oyster reefs in Naples Bay and then monitored the reefs for 1 year. Their initial reports show positive restoration and habitat benefits, and this project is a good example of what could be used in other areas as well. Next, Michael Weston from the Florida Forest Service provided an update on the Picayune Strand State Forest Management Activities Report and highlighted the restoration benefits of our SERP project, as well as the new public recreational opportunities in the restored forest. Finally, Julie Maytock presented the Basin's fiscal year 2025-2026 final millage and budget for approval. The board approved the millage rate for fiscal year 2025-2026, requesting the governing board to levy ad valorem taxes within the Big Cypress Basin, and the board also approved the fiscal year 2025-2026 basin budget in the amount of $22,247,748 and is submitting it to the governing board for inclusions in the district's budget. We closed our meeting with technical and staff reports, and the next Basin Board meeting is Thursday, October 30th at 11 a.m. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair, subject to the board's questions.
Thank you very much, Carl Roman. Does anyone have any questions or comments for her? Hearing none. Thanks. We'll go to the approval of the minutes of the August 14th, 2025 meeting. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes? Does anyone have a motion?
I'll move the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call that question. Mr. Spotswood? Yes or no on the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Colonel Roman?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved unanimously. We'll now go to our Executive Director's report with our Executive Director, Drew Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to make this brief to give us time for the discussion agenda item today, since we have a hard stop. First of all, the Southland Reservoir, we had a deadline in August to get us all the materials we needed to conduct our review. Phillips Heavy did ask for an extension to submit that material, so we granted them a 6-month extension. So now that new deadline is February 27th, 2026. Also, we just adopted our 2025 sea level rise and flood resiliency plan at the South Florida Water Management District. And this is a comprehensive list of priority resiliency projects with the goal of reducing flood risks in our potentially flooding impacted areas and our water resources. And so it's an incredible plan, a lot of detail, a lot of effort went into it, and it's going to be good for 5 years. This plan goes into the statewide resiliency plan. It will get updated annually if there are things that change, but this is our guidepost for resiliency for 5 years, and it gets plugged straight into the statewide resiliency plan. So I just want to thank publicly all the staff that put a lot of effort into this, because it's a very well-written and comprehensive document. And the last thing I want to update is on the landmark agreement that the governor signed July 18th on comprehensive Everglades restoration to expedite those efforts. We had a groundbreaking yesterday for the Blue Shanty Flowway, which was directly named as a priority project in those agreements. And we've also, those agreements form the SERP Oversight Group. And that oversight group is high-level agency leaders to basically govern the implementation of the MOU and the implementation of SERP. And that group has met a few times, and I can see the difference. Whenever you need a decision made, they're right there to help you make those decisions, right? And so when it comes to moving through the government process of comprehensive Everglades restoration, I can absolutely see how this group is going to make a difference in cutting through red tape and getting us to where we need to be with respect to progressing on an expedited fashion. So we're seeing it already. They're putting together a framework to explain how we're all going to operate, and so you should see that in the near future. But I just wanted to report that these folks are committed. So that's all I have for you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Bartlett. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Thanks. We're now going to move into our first public comment period. If you're here to comment on a specific agenda item, we ask that you hold your comment until we reach that item on our agenda. This comment period is for general comments not related to agenda items, and we appreciate everyone's help in running an efficient meeting. Public comments on consent agenda item is number 12 on the agenda, and public comment for the discussion agenda is item 25, and that'll be heard after the presentation, or public comments will be heard after the presentation. The public did have an opportunity to provide written comments prior to this meeting. We did not receive any e-comments. Is there general public comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We'll begin with Newton Cook, followed by Gil Smart.
Good afternoon, Newton Cook, United Waterfowlers of Florida. I'd like to invite everyone here and Zoom to the September 22nd at 5 p.m. in this room, the recreation meeting for the district, which is always a lot of fun and a large crowd. So if you're interested, please come and you'll find out how important it is to recreation, all the way from Orlando to the Keys. And as I stand here today to start the weather, there are thousands of people on the district land right now. In 20 years, I've probably given out 2 or 3 handouts. I'll give you one out today. It's bad enough when 2 years ago, bass masters took away the Lake O's ranking in the top 10 bass fishing lakes in America. Gone. But did you think it could get worse? Yes. Within the last week, Lake Okeechobee has been declared the dirtiest lake in America. How in the world can we let the heart of the Everglades be ranked as the dirtiest lake in America? The way they did it was simple. They took all the government information to test for 100 different lakes: phosphorus, turbidity, lead, mercury, on, and Lake Okeechobee ranked at the bottom. There's no excuse for that. And you complete folks, this all started years ago. You're about the 3rd or 4th governing board and people. But the FWC, the Corps of Engineers, and the Water Management District manage Lake Okeechobee. Well, not really, because there is no management committee. Can you believe that? For the heart of the Everglades, there's no management committee for the Lake Okeechobee. I am asking, begging, that a group be put together, co-chaired by the FWC, Corps of Engineers, and the Water Management District. It will meet 3 times a year. It will consist of the stakeholders, the anglers, fishers, hunters, the agencies, the cities, the towns. The old Lake Okeechobee committee we had once many years ago when it was destroyed by a hurricane had about 20 members. Towns. If we don't do this, the lake will never, ever recover. And the subject of that meeting should be one thing: Lake Okeechobee, no side issues. Where we stand today, where we are going to improve the lake, And those three agencies need to stand up and make a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. We'll hear next from Gil Smart, followed by Mark Perry.
Good afternoon, governing board members. My name is Gil Smart. I'm Policy Director for Friends of the Everglades. We're based in Stewart, founded in 1969 by Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. In the light of current events, it seems like a long time ago, but it was less than 4 months ago that many of us were in Belglade to hear about the Southland Water Resource Project and how mining limestone in the EAA and turning the empty pits into water storage was a grand thing. But since then, we haven't heard much about that grand thing. Southland backers were to have submitted an updated proposal to the district by August 27th, but as you heard, and in light of a legal challenge to the FDEP mining permit, Southland asked for and got an extension until February 27th, 2026. In fact, I see the folks from Southland here today, and perhaps they'll shed some light on a project that up until now looked as if it was going dark. Obviously, there remain many significant questions about this project, including but not limited to the potential impact on the adjacent EAA reservoir. As you know, Congressman Brian Mast and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have expressed their own concerns about this. The initial proposal did not have a water quality feature, though we're hearing that might have changed, but we won't know unless or until we see an actual revised plan. There's questions about cost. There's questions about footprint. This board raised many good questions yourselves. And then there's the broader question of whether we should be mining rock on land that may ultimately be needed for Everglades restoration. I would ask you to consider that this slowdown does not inspire confidence in this project. Again, there's no revised plan at this time, but Southland remains a terrible idea, and one we hope you'll view with healthy skepticism should a renewed proposal actually show up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smart. Next, we'll hear from Mark Perry, and then we'll move over to our Zoom participants.
Afternoon, Governing Board. Mark Perry, Executive Director of Florida Oceanographic Society. And just wanted to kind of bring up a few points of Friday at the County Coalition meeting out in Okeechobee. It was a good meeting. 12 different county commissioners, as you know, gather quarterly basically for discussing all the issues on the lake. Good presentations by FWC on aquatic group weed control, which is really important to the state. I think it helped answer a lot of questions. The also presented by Jen Reynolds, of course, was about the update on projects and programs within the system. And since 2019, we've had, of course, 75 different projects, and the amount of reduction looked like about 816 metric tons of nitrogen a year, and also about 349 metric tons of phosphorus. This is really good to understand how much we're actually reducing the phosphorus and nitrogen loading in these watersheds. And as you know, I'm keenly interested in the three watersheds, primarily Okeechobee, Caloosahatchee, and St. Lucia's, the Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection Plan. And as we brought up before, you know, we're interested in getting those reductions met through the BMAPs. And the BMAPs came out just in 2025 for those three watersheds. And you really need to get a handle on how they're doing or not doing. And it's really difficult to kind of pull that together in front of your body, but we're trying to. And through the NEEP report, what's also happening, if you look at the NEEP report attachment to your agenda today, you'll see that there's a good study that the district's doing in C23-24 Basin up there about a hydrologic kind of enhancement study project to quantify through water quality monitoring, actually quantify the amount of water quality benefits in storage. This needs to be done throughout the system so that we can really quantify how much of a reduction we're doing in nitrogen and phosphorus throughout these three watersheds. It's really, really critical to stop the pollution that's coming into these water bodies. It's just really critical that we get a handle on it. It's frustrating that we're not going to have the NEEP workshop in the end of this month. That's been postponed, I understand. But I encourage you to bring together those three entities: yourself, the district, the district, FDACS, and also FDEP. FDEP, our own Lawrence Glenn, should be here in front of you with a meeting with the other two agencies here to kind of give you an update on the BMAPs and on Northern Everglades Estuaries Protection Plan. So I encourage you to kind of pull that together as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. And we have no hands raised on Zoom. That concludes general public comment.
Well, thank you all for your comments. I appreciate it. We'll move now to board comment. And I'd like to thank Vice Chair Wagner for chairing the August meeting. I wasn't able to be here, and he ran a very, very efficient meeting. Too efficient, probably. He set the bar very high for us. I'd also like to thank the governor's office and his staff for putting together the MOA and for just expediting SERP and keeping the pedal to the metal and moving all of these projects forward. It really is, it makes a huge difference. His involvement, and it's amazing what we're going to be able to finish in his last year or so. And finally, for my comments, I'd like to send my condolences to the Seminole Tribe of Florida for the passing of Jim Shore, who was their general counsel. I had a chance to work with him a little bit, and I know he grew up here in Okeechobee, Mr. Butler was telling me, and I believe very strongly in my heart that South Florida is a better place for him, and want to pass my condolences to the tribe. Mr. Butler, any comments?
Oh, boy, you went to the middle. Caught me off guard, Mr. Chair. I like it. Yeah, keeping me awake. I'm going to finish this coffee here. Picking up where Chairman left off, no, my condolences on the passing of Mr. Shore. Immediately when I started talking about it with my mother has all the old high school annuals, and she went and she pulled out the 1963, his senior year annual, and showed his football picture. And he was a big football player, but lot of friends in Okeechobee. But you know, my recollection is really the first time that I knew of who Jim Shore was that infamous picture of him standing in the cabinet in the governor's office, signing the Seminole Water Compact. And so it's neat to then hear the history after the fact. But no, great man, leaves a great legacy for the tribe. As referenced earlier, a lot of folks attended the County Coalition meeting in Okeechobee last Friday. One of the highlights of that meeting was FWC giving their presentation on invasive aquatic plant management. Excellent presentation. I encourage anybody to go back and view that. You can find that video footage on the Okeechobee County Commission website under Lake Coalition, and I encourage you to again watch that presentation. And Drew, maybe we can get FWC here to give that presentation because they did a great job at laying out the why we have to control these invasive aquatic weeds. And I'm going off of memory here. I'm going to mess this quote up, but I'll just go ahead and give it away. The first thing they start with is the second leading cause of extinctions behind development taking habitat away is invasive plants taking away food sources. They had some other figures in there, such as bears relying on 25% of their food from insects. Now, there's some indirect portion of that, other animals that eat insects, and the bears eat those other animals. But no, they did a great job. It was good to hear FWC's approach, four-prong approach to invasive aquatic management. I'm going off the fly here. Mechanical. Of course, you got the herbicide. There's two others. I'm going to forget it. I should have done that. Fire. What's the fourth? Burn and fire. That's the same. Bio. That's right. Releasing thrips and other bio controls. Thank you, Jeremy. But of course, the big talk was herbicide use, herbicide reduction, and ultimately they showed the data and the importance of keeping the invasive aquatic weed population down to below 5%. And they had a neat graph on the herbicide usage reduction on Lake Okeechobee, and it has drastically decreased in the last few years. Granted, the number of trips they're making out on Lake Okeechobee is probably about eight cycles a year that the contractors are going out there. But the amount of the total volume of herbicide use is reduced, and they went through the deal. I encourage you to watch it. Again, our district partners with FWC, but I have full confidence that the staffs are following up with our contractors, and our contractors are getting done what our scientists are prescribing for the environment. So that was a great deal. In addition, it was mentioned, I think Newton mentioned it, heavy discussion there at the Lake Coalition about Lake Okeechobee, about muck in Lake Okeechobee, looking for solutions. That group of county commissioners, they're working. They're wanting to go take this to DC, and so there's a lot of momentum there for the lake, and it is needed. Finally, yesterday with the groundbreaking at the Blue Shanty, it was neat to see former Colonel Kelly, now Major General Kelly, there, and in his capacity, and visiting with him, he made it clear that the Secretary of the Army, with this memorandum of understanding, has made it clear to him to get Everglades restoration done and cut the BS out of the way. And the Corps is poised to move, and Drew, your group's poised to move, and I think there's lots of opportunities. We just got to keep the funding rolling, and let's get Everglades restoration wrapped up. Of course, anytime you're around General Kelly, he's a very motivational speaker, and he's a general for a reason, and it's always a pleasure. That's my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Butler. Mr. Hurley.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to reiterate Ben's points on yesterday's event. First of all, I got to hand it to the staff for conducting the event in some pretty horrible conditions, and you did an exceptional job. It was great to experience the General's energy. It does make me feel really confident with his engagement and our engagement that we'll really be able to move the timetable on a lot of this stuff forward, which is just terrific. It's always great to see the governor and his commitment as well. But that's it. That's all, Mike.
Thank you very much. Mr. Steinle.
No comment right now. Thanks.
Mr. Bergeron.
I always have a comment. Well, first, I want to thank our staff for that press conference and of the Blue Shanty, because this is a huge step forward. You know, you're standing there at this press conference, and you're talking about one of the last pieces of the puzzle to move water south. And you look across the levee and you see all the bridges. We know that the road's going to be done March of next year, elevated. We're working with our federal partners, 4 federal agencies and 4 state agencies. Drew sets that up every 2 months. And I want to thank our staff for putting a critical path together. So when the road's done, the other barriers are completed as well. And I've got to say, we're getting very good cooperation from the Department of the Interior, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Park Service, and the Corps. And then DOT is moving quite quickly. So in the short time frame here, we're going to be moving a lot more water south. And I'm really was excited. I want to thank the governor, and it was so interesting how much he knows about the Everglades. I was so impressed because he knows all of the benefits of what's going on. And so I want to thank our governor, and I want to thank our legislators for giving us the funding and the opportunity to continue forward. We're at the threshold in the next couple of years that we're going to be seeing benefits from projects that we built 25 years ago. And I also was excited to see General Kelly. He's become a good friend. I can remember when I first met him many, many years ago, and to get the emergency deviation on the S-12s, which saved a lot of wildlife in the Central, a great man, and a great partner into the future. So that's all I have to say, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Mr. Bergeron. Mr. Spotswood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to kind of piggyback on some of Ben's comments about use of herbicides and aquatic vegetation control, I've received a lot of comments and concern about that generally. Being from Key West, not something I've been intimately familiar with, but we do have the experts between our staff here at the district, the FWC folks at Army Corps. I do think that we have all of the experts and all the information. I think there's been a lot of good things happening. You know, the 42% reduction in herbicides year over year, big win. So hear the public, you know, I think it was at the 90-minute mark of that meeting from FWC that they start talking about this topic. So would certainly encourage anybody who's interested in this to dig into that. A lot of good information and more to come from us. And then to follow up on one of Newton's comments, you know, I've learned there is an interagency working group between the district, Army Corps, and FWC that are focused on the lake and use of herbicides and other matters there. So that ball's rolling. We hear you, and we'll keep working on it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Spotswood. Colonel Roman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one brief item. I'd like to highlight how great it was to be with the groundbreaking for the Blue Shanty Flowway. It was a real honor to be with the governor and General Kelly and the stakeholders and my fellow governing board members for that event. I feel that when history looks back on the incredible progress we've made in restoring America's Everglades, I believe that the historic agreement that was signed with Governor DeSantis on behalf of the state of Florida and the Department of the Army will be recognized as a pivotal moment. It's incredible how committed not only General Kelly, representing the federal piece of this, is towards removing barriers and getting things done. And as you recall, this board has been talking about removing barriers since we first got together in order to speed up Everglades restoration projects and get the job done. Now, we are working on multiple fronts to get projects done faster and with less money. And this is the concurrency or the concurrently efforts that we've talked about as a board, rather than doing one thing at a time in a very linear fashion. So I'm very encouraged. I'm very proud to be a part of this moment, because I think when history looks back, this will be a pivotal moment in Everglades restoration. And I don't want to ignore the fact that it wouldn't be possible if Drew and his team were not ready to step up and to take more on and accomplish their jobs and these projects in a professional manner. I mean, we already were at a pace that was an incredible momentum in Everglades restoration. Now with this agreement, more barriers are going to be removed and projects are going to accelerate. And that's what we want. But it takes people, professional people that are dedicated to get these projects done and done right. And I really want to take my hat off to the staff that's making this all happen, because I think it's pretty incredible. So that's all I have to share, but wow. I mean, wow. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, Colonel Roman. Mr. Martinez. We'll come back to you. And
No comment, Mr. Chair.
You can have as many chances as you want. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any board member who wants to move any items on the consent agenda to the discussion agenda? Molly, is there public comment on consent?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We'll begin with Newton Cook, followed by Laura Olympio.
Sorry, my anticipation was a little short. Item 17, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission Land Management Services Agreement. The district just runs an incredible hunting and fishing program, and bird watching and camping and kayaking, and if it's recreation, South Florida Water Management District is way above the other water management districts I work with, and it's obvious when you're out on the properties. I always tell people, if you want to see a well-managed property, go to Dupree, just park your car and just walk. And I almost guarantee you're going to see wildlife, and you're going to be impressed by the ecology of the property. I want to say thanks to James Harbaugh. We did the long ride the other day. It takes all day riding on the rocky levees. The SDAs, of course, are having problems with the cattail intrusion. Lots of spraying could go on out there. And we have hundreds of hunters going to wander out there at 4 o'clock in the morning, pitch black dark, and many of them never been there before, and they have to find those little parking spots somewhere out there on those levees. And if it wasn't for the districts and the ladies from the FWC and all, we would never have those programs that are, and again, thousands of people during the course of a year. So I want to thank James for doing that for us. And I can only say that I wish all the other water management districts would put in as much effort and time and resources as the South Florida Water Management does into recreation on their properties. And it earns you something. It earns you like Bishop Wright and his Florida Conservation Association, who goes out on the properties and does an incredible amount of work on the properties. Volunteers. I mean, they'll run 25 airboats with concrete pillars on them if they have to in order to get the job done. That does not happen unless you have great cooperative agreements between the district and the stakeholders. And it's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. We'll hear next from Laura Olympio.
Good afternoon, governing board members. My name is Laura Olympio, and I am here on behalf of the Florida Association of Special Districts. I'm providing public comment today related to consent agenda item number 18, staff's request to publish a notice of proposed rule and adopt rules for 40E7 Florida Administrative Code. FASD recognizes the importance of having clear waterways and eliminating aquatic vegetation, trash, and debris from South Florida's interconnected waterways. Many of FASD's more than 90 special districts face the same challenges within their own water management systems as your agency. With this background, FASD has been an active participant in this rulemaking process since it began in 2022. It participated in all the public workshops and provided public comment on prior versions of the proposed rules. With this engagement and participation, the district should be well aware that special districts, and especially water control districts, are extremely interested in these proposed rules and their final outcome. Upon reviewing the current proposed rules and the statement of estimated regulatory cost, one thing is glaringly obvious. Special districts are going to be disproportionately affected if these rules are finalized. The CERC's summary of findings plainly states this fact. I quote, approximately 79% of the total potentially impacted acreage is accounted for by water control districts. The second and third Most potentially impacted parcel groups include agricultural landowners at 11% and government entities at 6% respectively. Since water control districts will bear the greatest burden with these regulations, we ask that the district continue to engage with FASD and other water control districts before the proposed rules are finalized. While the current proposed rules are an improvement, there is still further revisions that can be made that address the specific challenges that this group will face. Because special districts and water control districts come in all shapes and sizes, FASD asks that the district not take a one-size-fits-all approach to rulemaking that fails to account for the unique circumstances and real-world limitations that are faced by special districts. There are other alternatives that could be addressed the district's concerns and result in a lower cost to special districts. Overall, FASD recognizes the importance of this effort and the district's desire to remove aquatic vegetation, trash, and debris from South Florida's interconnected waterways. However, additional coordination with FASD and other stakeholders, along with further refinement of the proposed rules, is necessary and will lead to rules that do not disproportionately impact special districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olympio. And Mr. Chairman, we have no additional public comment on consent.
Thank you all for your comments. Before we go to a motion, I want to let you know that agenda item 16 requires a 2/3 majority approval vote. Is there a motion to approve consent?
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call that question. Mr. Spotswood?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Colonel Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Thanks. That passes unanimously. We're going to move now to discussion. Ms. Reynolds.
Do I have it?
Good afternoon. We have a fair amount of ground to cover here because I'll be walking us down the pathway of this project since 2019. At the end of my presentation, I'll have 3 resolutions for you. The first one is requesting authorization to negotiate and enter into a contract amendment for this project. And then the other 2 resolutions are both related to the land acquisition for this project. So I just wanted to set the stage on that before we get started. So I'm going to start with the project timeline. In 2019, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection put out a request for information for projects associated with the Lake Okeechobee BMAP. And as part of that public exploration for a project, EIP first introduced the idea of this project. And in 2020, along with a bunch of other projects, this conceptual project was placed in the Okeechobee BMAP update to address pollution in some of the priority basins. And grant funding from DEP was made available for this project that we're talking about today. And then in 2021, that's when the Water Management District first solicited proposals. We solicited proposals to design, construct, and operate a stormwater treatment project. And in April, we received 2 proposals, one from EIP and the second one from RES, Resource Environmental Solutions. During that process of evaluation, RES actually withdrew their proposal. And in May, we brought to the board the proposal to negotiate and enter into a contract with EIP for this project. And in December, we executed a contract with EIP. What happened then between 2022 and 2023 was we went through the due diligence portion of the project. This is the feasibility study portion of the project the reconnaissance study, the design documentation report, looking at the conceptualization of the project. And what we realized during that time frame is that we were looking at the project a little bit differently from the developer. The Water Management District and the developer weren't really looking at the project the same way. The developer was looking at the project in terms of how do we build a project that allows us to meet the requirement that we set out the proposal for at the cheapest cost. The district was looking at the project sort of how we look at our traditional projects. We have this piece of property and we want to get the most out of it for the taxpayers' dollars that we can so that we can maximize nutrient reduction and look at a really long lifespan for a project, right? We look at projects on a 50-year horizon. The developer was looking at the project on more of a 5 to 10-year horizon because that's what they were required to perform. And so we were looking at the project differently, and we were having a hard time coming to agreement on a design that fulfilled both of our objectives because we weren't aligned completely on the objectives that we were working on. And the language in our contract allowed interpretation both ways. And so it was a bit challenging to get past that. And so in April of 2023, EIP proposed incorporating additional land made available from RES, that other proposer, to combine those two areas into one project. And in May of 2024, we brought that back to the governing board and asked for approval to expand the project footprint from that original 3,400 acres, adding another 1,400 acres. Don't worry, I'm going to go through this again in just a moment. And combining the projects into one project, reinitiating the design so that we could combine these projects. Those discussions took a little bit of time, as you can see, from April 2023 to May of 2024. And then we brought a revised preliminary design to a public meeting in August 2024, because the other thing that we realized is that EIP was not engaging the stakeholders and the public in the same way that the Water Management District normally engages the public in our projects. And this was a problem, and we needed to close that gap. And so we started engaging more with Okeechobee County, with the landowners in the area, with the community involved in the area where this project was being proposed. And so we incorporated the feedback from those public meetings into the preliminary design. And just 2 weeks ago, we hosted another public meeting in Okeechobee to go through how we incorporated their feedback into the preliminary design in anticipation of bringing this project to the governing board today. So I'm going to go through why this project is in this location, some of the changes in scope. I went through that briefly just now, but I'm going to go through it in a little bit more detail. The stakeholder input, how we're trying to use this project and this delivery mechanism to expedite restoration projects and why it's important for us to keep moving forward. The price proposal, and then how we would go and posture ourselves into negotiations for this contract. So why here? Lake Okeechobee is important to us. We love Lake Okeechobee and it needs our help. Too many nutrients have been flowing into the lake for too long, and although we have some projects already operating in the watershed, there's not yet enough. And as you can see from the numbers here, the latest 5-year average load is still over 250 metric tons of total phosphorus, over the limit that Lake Okeechobee can handle, process, and stay healthy. So we have some more work to do. And when you look at the numbers, the projects are needed in areas where we can tackle the largest load by processing the least amount of water. So that means that we tackle the highest concentrations first, and that means that Taylor Creek, Nubbin Slough subwatershed is on my radar. And I am looking at how do we tackle that subwatershed in order to really get after reducing the load into Lake Okeechobee. We need projects in all the subwatersheds, but we identified Taylor Creek, Nubbin Slough as a priority subwatershed for us. And within that subwatershed, there's a series of basins. And those are on the right-hand side of the slide, and they have numbers, right? So the basins are the S154 basin, the S191. And we have some projects already existing in this subwatershed to include the Taylor Creek stormwater treatment area, the Lakeside Ranch, Nubbin Slough stormwater treatment areas, and we're working on some additional projects, the Grassy Island and Brady Ranch projects that are currently in design. Those are also in this subwatershed. But the S154 and 154C basins need this project. And this project will create a reduction that completely accounts for the reductions needed in those two basins. And in addition, this project will have capacity to treat additional water from the watershed at large. So it will completely tackle the reductions needed in S154 and 154C, plus treat additional water. So this is a simplified graphic of how this project works. As you look at this project, the L62 canal is on the top of the map. What this project does is it captures the storm water that flows into the L62 canal from the S154 basin that we saw on the previous slide, that flows into the L62 canal. And then normally it would just come south and it would go into the C38 canal and into the lake. What this project will do is where that yellow star is, there will be a pump station that will capture 90% of the water the storm water that comes through the L62 canal from the S154 basin and put it through a stormwater treatment area. And so there are 7 cells that make up the 4,800 acres of treatment. And I'm going to use my pointer here. So water will come in here, untreated water through the canal into the pump station. And then water will go from the pump station, flows this way here. And then each of these cells operates independently. And so whereas you're familiar with some of our stormwater treatment areas in south of the lake, we use a series of treatment cells, and they go from one treatment cell to another treatment cell and gets polished. When you're trying to reduce load, it's better to do the cells in, instead of in series, you do them simultaneously, right? And so we put water into each of these cells, and it reduces load. And so we distribute water through these top cells, it comes down this way, clean water collects here, and discharges here. On this side, through the pump station, underneath the canal, and then the untreated water goes along this side, and treated water comes out this side of the project and discharges here, just in general. But this isn't exactly how the project was originally designed or originally proposed. So the initial design concept, as I mentioned, was the most cost-effective project to meet that minimum standard. And so it was 3,400 acres, anticipated to provide 13 to 15 metric tons of phosphorus reduction. The STA cells were sloped, not flat. EIP had introduced the idea of a hybrid innovative technology. So that meant that if the project wasn't meeting those phosphorus reductions, they could use innovative technologies, meaning some kind of chemical treatment, in order to get the numbers down that were required for them to meet the pay-for-performance goals that were in the original proposal. It captured water from the S154 flow in the L62, but that amount wasn't well defined in the original proposal. and it processed 180 to 220,000 acre feet annually. As I mentioned, we needed to work through some of these design ideas that we weren't completely comfortable with. And so as we were going through that process, we came to an updated concept, and that incorporated that additional land that's in the red circle on this slide, which added 50% more treatment area. It also considered various configurations, so you'll see that timeline got protracted for our design. We had originally anticipated that it would only take us about 18 months to get through preliminary design, but here we are, it's been 3 years. Because we had to go through some various configurations and come to agreement on how can we capture as much of the stormwater and posture ourselves for a long-term project with a maximum nutrient reduction. And so that got to us to our current concept, which is a 4,800 acre site, reducing 20 to 22 metric tons of total phosphorus, having leveled cell floors, which is a best practice that we've learned in our decades of building and operating stormwater treatment areas, incorporating emergent vegetation, which is the best way for us to maximize load uptake. The pump station, originally, the original design had sort of agricultural style pump stations, not enclosed structures. The new design incorporates a pump station that meets our district standards that we know and we feel very comfortable with because it looks like all of our other pump stations with an enclosed building, capturing the flow from the L62 and processing up to 360,000 acre feet of water, designed to balance cost efficiency and maximum load reduction. And so really incorporating the principles that we've used in designing and operating our stormwater treatment areas across the district. Some additional changes that are incorporated into the current design. There's these structures here. These are existing structures originally built in 1964 and 1972 as part of the Corps' work with the Herbert Hoover Dike. In the original design, these were just proposed to be utilized, but in the new design, we've optimized their use in order to make this project more effective, and they will be completely replaced as part of this project. That lowers our requirement to have to refurbish those structures sometime in the future and gets them done now, so that their use can be optimized in this project and also reduce future O&M costs. It also allows for operations during maintenance of various features of the project and includes the FPL substation that'll be necessary because this pump station associated with the project is an electric pump station. It's going to be near some neighborhoods. That way this pump station is quiet. It's more efficient and easier for us to maintain. It uses axial flow electric pumps in a closed building, like I mentioned before, and anticipates the long-term operations and maintenance of a 50-year life cycle project. We've also incorporated design changes based on stakeholder input. And so that includes a variety of things, and I'm going to go through those briefly on the subsequent slides. So the first one was lowering the cell elevations. This helps to balance the material on site and also improve flood protection for the project and for neighboring communities. It incorporates extensive groundwater monitoring. At least 30 sites have been identified where we will monitor groundwater, both in order to achieve a baseline of the groundwater monitoring before the project, also during construction and post-construction during operations. We've provided links, so all of the existing groundwater monitoring sites are already in DB Hydro, but on our project website, we've also created links right from the project website in order to make it easier for our stakeholders to be able to find that groundwater well data and be able to monitor it on their own if they should choose. We incorporated buffer areas, over 600 acres of buffer areas. So here in the north, there's 200 acres of buffer area. Here, another about 200 acres here, and about 250 acres here. I have the numbers wrong somewhere in my head because I think this is maybe 150. It's about 600 total, 250 here. In order to create some separation between neighborhoods and the project site, and also to allow us to incorporate recreational areas and recreational features in the project design. And so what are some of those? Some nature-based recreational activities that we have at most of our projects, but also some potential for adding additional recreational areas. We do have horseback riding at a few of our sites already. Hickory Hammock and Grassy Island are two examples. And that's something that the community has asked us to consider incorporating here, as well as there's an existing bike path that's used by the community, and they've asked us to incorporate a bike path that would connect to that existing bike path, and that's something that we can definitely incorporate into the recreational features, along with some of our traditional nature-based recreational activities. So I mentioned we had a public meeting just 2 weeks ago. We're working on incorporating comments from that. Some of those I already talked about and are incorporated in the current design. Some of those we're still working on how we incorporate them into the design, particularly the recreation features. And then also we had some comments that not all of our information was easily available on the project website, and so we're creating links on our project website like we did with the groundwater monitoring, so that you can go to the project website and easily then navigate to other portions of the district's website, so that people aren't trying to figure out how do they find information from this project on DB Hydro and procurement and our project site and our mapping. Instead, we're putting that all on the project website with links to the other areas of our district website. So as we move into the price discussion, how this project was structured is what you had approved previously was for us to go through the feasibility portion of the project, get to a preliminary design, and then the developer was required to bring us a draft price proposal. And that draft price proposal is what I have summarized on this slide. That stipulated price proposal then allows us to, with your approval, enter into negotiations and amend the contract to move forward from a preliminary design into a final design, construction, and then operations and turnover of the project. And so the first part of the stipulated price proposal is the land acquisition. The land acquisition was negotiated in the phase 1 of the project to be the appraised value of land. And so the appraisal on the land came back at $41,250,000. And so that is what we are requesting from the board today, is acquiring the land at that appraised value. Then the price proposal goes into the final design and the engineering during design and construction, and that price is $58 million in the stipulated price proposal. The construction at $483 million, and a facility startup. This is the time period between finishing construction and turning it over to the district. In some of our other conventional projects, we would consider this the OTMP period, where you're making sure that everything is working and operating correctly, that you're in compliance with your operational permits before the facility is transferred to the district. I'm going to talk about each of these in a little bit more detail. So first, what we've already paid. The phase 1, The phase 1 payments were broken down into 6 tasks. The first 3 are on this slide, and they included the reconnaissance study and the design documentation report. Those were those 2 first blue boxes that we talked about on the first slide. The due diligence of, is this a feasible project? Then the preliminary design. You might remember when we came back to add the land, the additional land, that was at the end of task 3. And so we needed to redo the design, where you'll see here in task 5, the preliminary design for the expanded project. And so of this total, this is 24 million total, we have paid so far 20 million of that 24 million. It's 23.6 actually. 20 million of that 24 million we've already paid. The additional 3.6 million is what the contractor still owes us for the final preliminary design deliverables. And so those are due in October. Those will get finished up and incorporate some of the things that I mentioned earlier that we were still incorporating in the design. We had a meeting with them 3 weeks ago, went through some additional questions we had on their design, the preliminary design deliverables that had specific technical questions that we wanted them to tighten up, and we won't pay them until we get those design deliverables. Moving on to the things that need to be negotiated in the phase 2. That includes the land acquisition. We've negotiated the price in phase 1, but all of the conditions need to still be clarified and documented in phase 2. But the district would assume land management from the site once we close on the land. We would anticipate that that would be in December of this year, but we would not close on the land until we've fully negotiated phase 2 of the project. And so upon fully negotiating phase 2, we would acquire the land would be transferred to us, we would assume land management. What does that mean? There's currently some people leasing the land for cattle operations and sod. We would then take over the management of that, and we would also then get the benefits of any of the fees and proceeds from those activities in accordance with the agreements that we have with those entities on site. And then we would terminate those based on the construction schedule.
Jen, before you flip, just interrupt here. So this will be helpful. So price per acre, you're trying to put some comps up here. But we didn't put the comp up for this project. So it's about 8,500.
It's 8,600, yep.
8,600, okay. Thanks.
Yeah, and so I tried to just provide some comparable price per acre. This one is 8,600, and so it's in the ballpark of what we're seeing with other prices. And one of the reasons we went out with the request for proposal back in 2021 was to see what the interest was of people being interested in doing a project with us. We didn't get people knocking down our door trying to sell land for us to do a project. That's part of why we entered into this type of delivery mechanism.
Jennifer, one other question there. The risk and carrying costs, is that the delta, the 250,000 I see in the 4.1 million?
So I put that bullet up there just to identify that in this delivery mechanism, the investor accepted the risk and the carrying cost of the land up front. And so they started, they put forward in the RFI this project to DEP back in 2019. So they've been working a land deal and accepting the risk on the land and the carrying costs since about that time. That's something that in a more conventional delivery mechanism, the district would have to accept that. And we have projects where we have owned land and had to maintain land and manage land for a long time before we're able to bring a project to construction. So on the final design portion, so the industry standards for final designs or for design costs range from 5 to 20%. The district designs are usually pretty lean. We're able to deliver design at a lower cost. So we're more in the under 10% for most of our projects. And I, again, gave you some comparables there on the bottom. Depending on the complexity and the scope of the project, and also changes during design, you have different percentages of how much your design might cost. Also, the more expensive that a project gets, your design cost is going to be usually a lower percentage. So if you have a $1.3 billion project, your design is not going to be 10% of that. Also, the feasibility level modeling. So when we do modeling on our projects, the feasibility level, we usually do that in-house. In this type of project, that was done by the developer and by their consultants, not in-house. We just checked their work. Also, the pre-engineering during planning as well as engineering during construction are part of the costs that are included in design costs in this stipulated price proposal. And during this portion, that investor risk is still out there, right? Because there hasn't been a determination that we're actually going to move forward on this project. And so I also just included that bullet because, again, that's something that's a little bit different than in a conventional delivery. On the construction side, we have not moved into the negotiations of the design or the construction costs for this project, nor for the terms by which the construction would be delivered. As part of our negotiations, we need to make sure that as we're transitioning from a pay-for-performance type project into a more design-build project delivery, that we need to make sure that as part of our negotiations, we are holding the contractor accountable for the cost and schedule of this construction project. That is a little bit of a change from how the current contract is written, and we need to negotiate more of our traditional language for construction delivery into the amendment for this construction project, and we intend to do that. I put some comparable recent bids on the bottom of this slide as well. This project has some complex features, and I'm going to show you some of those on the next slide, that include the proximity to the Herbert Hoover Dike and also topography. We mentioned it on the cell leveling slide earlier in the presentation, but unlike some of our stormwater treatment areas like the A2 that we just recently built, which was very flat level land, this land has a lot more topography, and so it's a different earthwork scenario. And it's a little complicated. So this is actually a sort of simplified design deliverable that just outlines a bit about how the L62 canal will need to be rerouted, but will allow the project to be constructed while the current features can continue to be operated for flood control. You'll see this sag culvert. That means that there's a channel that will go underneath the canal to deliver water to the 4 STA cells that are on the east side compared to the 3 STA cells that are on the west side. The pump station in the middle is here. And so this type of engineering just requires engineering. And so the pump station and the structures are a little complicated. And that's part of what has taken us a while to work through some of those specifics in the preliminary design, and why we will be doing a lot of work with the designers and with the construction contractor as we move from preliminary design to final design. So what's next? I mentioned we have 3 resolutions for you. The first resolution that we have is to negotiate and enter into a contract for final design, construction, operations, and turnover to the district in a not-to-exceed amount of $616 million. Land acquisition for the appraised value at $41,250,000. And then the third resolution that I have for you is, as part of using grant funding for land acquisition, we have to advise DEP that we are using the grant funding for that purpose associated with the project. And we have to outline that separately in a resolution, and that's what the third resolution is for you. We anticipate that the final design would be complete in 2027, and we'd be able to immediately go into construction. There may even be early construction that the contractor can start ahead of final design being completed, and we would like to work toward expediting the project with them in order to do that. This project was named in the MOU that was signed in July as part of expediting Everglades restoration, and so we would like to move forward as expeditiously as we can, and this delivery mechanism would allow us to do that. So construction will take about 3 years, and then we would anticipate the facility being able to start operating in 2030 with turnover to the district for long-term O&M in 2031. So with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, thanks very much, Ms. Reynolds. We're going to go to public comment first, and then we'll come back for board discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll hear first from Caitlin Newcamp, followed by Mark Perry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the presentation, Jen. Caitlin Newcamp with Audubon, Florida. We're here to express our support, our continued support for this project and phase 2 of the project going forward. The Lower Kissimmee Basin STA is a crucial step towards storing and treating water before it reaches Lake O, helping to address long-standing nutrient pollution challenges. For decades, efforts to control phosphorus in Lake O's watershed have yielded only limited progress, as we know, and to make meaningful improvements, we need strategic regional projects like the Lower Kissimmee Basin STA that address pollution at its source. This STA exemplifies the type of investment required upstream of Lake O. Without tackling nutrient inputs at their actual source, we will continue to see harmful algal blooms and nutrient flows into our estuaries and the Everglades. This location is particularly well suited for the STA. It is one of the highest loading basins feeding the lake, situated to intercept water from Kissimmee Valley, the largest contributing watershed. More specifically, as referenced by last year's CEFR report, the phosphorus load coming out of Lake Kissimmee increases fourfold by the time it reaches Lake O. In addition, the STA's proximity to the C-38 canal will ensure a reliable water supply to optimize STA performance. Simply put, this site offers the greatest potential for the watershed. We also want to highlight the value of integrating recreational features at this phase. We know that trails, viewing platforms, birding areas, and opportunities for hunting and fishing can connect people to these landscapes, all while keeping water treatment a top priority. The impact of this project extends beyond the Lower Kissimmee Basin. When paired with other regional initiatives such as the Component A Reservoir, it can create momentum for a broader systemic approach to restoring the lake. Together, these efforts help shift our perspective, treating the lake not as a downstream problem to manage, but as the centerpiece of Everglades ecosystem. We strongly encourage the continued progress on this project, and we do urge that the maximum feasible acreage be dedicated to future water storage and treatment projects in the region, and we would also emphasize that in the future, more cost-effective strategies would also be working with landowners to help alter nutrient movement in the watershed. And thank you for your leadership and dedication in restoring both Lake O and the Everglades. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newcamp. Next, we'll hear from Mark Perry, followed by Scott Hunt.
Thank you. Again, Mark Perry, Florida Oceanographic. Just, we've been into this for a long time and looking at stormwater treatment areas throughout the system. And restoring stormwater treatment areas are essentially restoring the wetlands that were lost due to overdrainage and our mismanagement of water over hundreds of years. So what we really need to do is a project like this, and that's make STAs wherever we can to kind of restore those wetland efforts that help to clean and store and clean that water before it enters into our water bodies such as the Kissimmee and Lake Okeechobee. So obviously this project is going to be helpful for that. We've lost a lot of our wetland capacities and we're trying to restore it through the stormwater treatment areas. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it's only going to minimize maybe 18 to 22, maybe 22 metric tons a year. We've got a long ways to go because the starting loads in the watershed for Okeechobee are about 541 metric tons a year. We got to get to 105, as Jen Reynolds pointed out. We got a long ways to go in the rest of the watershed, but this project will helpfully do that. The only thing north of the lake is what we're losing too. We're losing all that storage and treatment north of the lake because projects are fading away. We do have low car possibly moving forward. There's a 200,000 acre foot reservoir that we're trying to get built up there. Big cost, $3.5 billion, but trying to get the low car done up there north of the lake. And also we've lost, recently when Corps terminated the Lake Okeechobee Watershed Restoration Project. That was just kind of terminated by their efforts. We started that planning process prior to 2006. It was put on hold, and then 2016 it came back into planning. We all attended meetings trying to get something north of the lake going for storage and treatment, and it's just kind of faded away. We're hopeful that the district can take another look at Paradise Run or the other components, which are right across the Kissimmee, obviously, the canal from this project. So Paradise Run is another kind of wetland restoration along with the Kissimmee River project that's next to it. So there's another, almost 5,000 plus acres that could be restored into kind of wetland habitat, wetland restoration that can really help to store, treat, and kind of move that water back into the Kissimmee Valley and back into the lake. So I encourage you to continue on with this project and others like it north of the lake for more storage and treatment of that water before it enters into Lake Okeechobee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Next, we'll hear from Scott Hunt, followed by Paul Julian, who has his hand raised on Zoom.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. This STA is not in a good location. The L62 canal is a part-time problem 4 to 5 months of the year. It is nearly dry and does not flow the remainder of the year. The STA is surrounded by residential communities. STA is surrounded by 3 airports that does not comply with FAA guidance nor land development regulations to keep aviation safe. The buffers that have been mentioned are minuscule. The FAA likes 5 miles. There's no mention of those dimensions. The land is sloped, and you're going to have to move millions of yards of soil from the high end to the low end to level the cells. This adds dramatically to the cost versus situating this on a flat land that's already flat. Neither the district nor EIP has provided us any engineering data that supports your claim that it won't affect the water table. At the update meeting 2 weeks ago, we were told that the district would not supply said engineering reports, only a summary. Please provide the data so we can review it. We just want to see the hydrology reports that you claim indicate we won't be affected. We've been lied to repeatedly. They told us the maximum water height would be 1 to 6 feet below the adjacent land. 2 weeks later, they presented plans that showed that it was 4 feet above the finished floor, never mind of the adjacent land. The plan today still doesn't meet the standard we were told in 2023. EIP told us this project was outside the safety buffer zone required by FAA guidance. They lied, and when they lie, each and every one of you are lying to us. Our commissioners have asked you to come in and find the most concentrated soils, including closed dairies, and excavate them. You already likely have the data. It will be far cheaper in the long run to cure the illness than to continue to treat the symptoms in perpetuity. At least one board member and Jennifer Reynolds have stated they don't believe this is a legacy phosphorus problem in this basin. If you really believe that, then you should get in there and get control of the new application instead of treating the flow. This contract has been suffering a severe identity crisis since day one. Jennifer Reynolds told you multiple times in 2021 this was a design build, all while EIP kept pounding the drum that it was a pay-for-success contract. Double talk. The truth is, it was both, which is why I refer to it as the double pay STA. Then in May of 24, Jennifer told you it was in fact a pay-for-performance contract in direct conflict to the resolution you passed in 2021. Now today we see it's not a pay-for-success. Regardless of what you call it, we just see the price exploding from the earlier projections. There's no good reason to employ the use of an unqualified, unnecessary middleman like EIP. Using EIP is the
Please wrap up
antithesis
your comments.
of the Doge movement. If you're going to continue using unnecessary middleman, the next time you get a large grant, you not only have a fiduciary obligation, but a moral obligation to disclose that you might only recognize
Please wrap up your comments, Mr.
50
Hunt.
to 60% of the net environmental benefit of the money being spent because of the middleman. The Lower Kissimmee STA is the anti-Doge STA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. And we did just receive another public comment card for in-person public comment. We'll hear from Christine Stapleton, and then we'll move over to our Zoom participants.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Christine Stapleton. I have a few questions. You said how big the buffer area was in acres. I imagine that's for the whole perimeter. The people don't really, the total number of acres, they want to know how wide the buffer's going to be from their property to the STA. So telling us the whole acres is meaning, for the public, is kind of meaningless. Will the buffers be larger near residential areas as opposed to other areas, or is the buffer the same width the entire way around the project? So I'd like to know that. The structures that you talked about were from the 1960s or 70s. I believe those are core structures, not owned by the district. And so I'm wondering why they're in this contract, or if they're in them for a reason, why isn't the Corps paying for the actual work? It sounds like the district is picking up the cost for all of that. And there's been no cost analysis provided to the public for this project. It seems like there should be a cost analysis when you're going from 300 million to 616 million. That's a huge amount of money for the taxpayers. And in terms of transparency, when you have a project that you know is very controversial in the community and people want information, I don't understand why the district early on doesn't just, these are public records, just put them on the website. It's very easy to do. No contract, the RFPs, the appraisals, none of that's on the website. Or it's very, some of it's on there, it's very difficult to find, and I'm pretty good at finding stuff. So on the transparency front, I think the district can do more, not just on this project, but on other projects, providing us for information, and it'll save your folks in the media, you know, that whole area, because they won't be getting all these public records requests for these documents. Just put them out there. It's all public record. So these are the things, you know, I think that, well, these are the questions that I still have that I haven't heard answered. The pay for performance, I remember I was at the meeting, or I listened to it, the board was so excited about pay for performance because the taxpayers wouldn't hold the risk. If this thing doesn't work, you know, and I remember everybody being all excited. Pay for performance is gone. So now the district is on the hook if this thing works, not the, you know, because the entire contract is, you know, 180 from what it was. So these are some of the concerns that I have and questions I'd like answered, and from what I hear from the community out in Okeechobee. Thanks, bye.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stapleton. We'll hear next from Paul Julian, followed by Nyla Pipes. Mr. Julian, please unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We hear you.
Awesome, thank you. Paul Julian with the Everglades Foundation. It was encouraging to hear the rumble of the thunder and lightning outside. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it there in person, but I know we've been praying for rain and we're getting it now, so that's encouraging. So thank you, Jennifer Reynolds, for your presentation. It kind of walked through this topic very well, and kind of gave us the background that we needed, that the collective we needed. The reality is we're well below our Lake O BMAP targets and nowhere near meeting the TMDL limit for the lake, with inflow loads being about 4 to 5 times higher than the regulatory limit that we need to achieve. So we kind of need to take a minute and look where the collective we are relative to our water management and water quality goals for the lake and the region, honestly. The lake is kind of hinting and telling us we need to do better with wavering SAV coverage, diminishing fisheries, and the chronic and persistent harmful algal blooms that occur every year. The lower Kissimmee Basin STA will provide treatment and storage north of the lake, which we desperately need, specifically targeting the sub-basins with the high nutrient loads and concentrations. And it's ideally situated to capture, store, and treat Kissimmee River water if needed. I mean, it's right there on the river. While this project won't get us across that proverbial finish line, it kind of gets us to that next mile marker by helping address long-standing nutrient pollution challenges within the Northern Everglades ecosystem. A final note, thinking holistically, when this project is combined with the other regional efforts, as Mark and Caitlin mentioned, like LOCAR, in integrating that into the lake regulatory schedule and pairing it with storage and treatment south of the lake, we begin to develop a more sustainable and robust water management system with the ability to flow clean water to where it's intended to go. This project will also build resilience into the system. Lake Okeechobee is the beating heart of the Everglades. It's time we start treating it that way. We strongly encourage and continued progress on this project, and urge that the maximum feasible acreage be dedicated to water storage and treatment north of the lake to reach our goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Julian. Next, we'll hear from Nyla Pipes.
Sound check?
We hear you.
Fantastic. Nyla Pipes, One Florida Foundation. Boy, from the get-go, to be honest, this has been kind of a clunky process. And I've got to admit, I remain a bit lukewarm on the entire thing. And that's kind of difficult for me to say because I have been pounding the drum about the need for projects north of Lake Okeechobee and northwest where this is. It's important that we put water back on the land. It's important that we create places where this water can be cleaned and stored and all of that. However, one of the concerns I have, and it's not a small one, is this major price jump. And I know that we have done things, I can appreciate, from the presentation, that we have done things to improve the design and treatment capabilities, and that the district has done things so that the taxpayer is getting more bang for their buck. But one of the reasons I have always supported these public-private partnership type agreements is because so often we can get these things done faster than what the state can do in partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers. And we can also get them done less expensively, typically. And it alarms me because I am not convinced, based on what I've seen so far, that that is what's happening in this case. I appreciate the comps. I too feel like we still don't have enough information. It's not as easy for people to dig into all of the details. I think we need this broken down a little bit more, considering that vast price jump. Now, that being said, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer completely. I will applaud you all for working hard to try to get this to a project that is going to be successful in an area we desperately need a successful project. And I appreciate particularly the effort to work with the stakeholders, and I encourage you to continue that. So while I'm lukewarm, we're along for the ride, so we'll see where this goes. But I do think that $483 million construction cost particularly needs examined. And I'm afraid that that's a construction cost that we're going to see jumping in all of our projects. And I don't know what we do about that, but it's become alarming to me, not just in this project, but in the rest of SERP as well. So I think the jump in construction cost is going to be an ongoing theme that we're going to have to address in some way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pipes. Mr. Chairman, we have no additional public comment on this item.
No, thank you all for your comments. We're going to go down to board discussion and comment, and I'll start with whoever wants to talk. Ben?
Thank you, I think, sir. And if I could reserve, I mean, that's, I'll walk through some things here, but may have other things that present themselves. Was meeting with Ms. Reynolds as late as 11 o'clock this morning, and I admitted to her then that I have no prepared comments for today at that time. But there's a lot in my head, and there's a lot that's happened in 4 years on this project. I can tell you this one has been personal for me, and the reason it's been personal is it's my community. I understand the importance of this project. And yes, we need a project like this in that area. It, you know, when we talk about the BMAP, formation, the way the BMAPs are constructed, we talk about the cooperating agencies, we talk about FDACs, their role in water quality improvement, implementing BMPs on farms and ranches. We've heard the kind of the benchmarks. BMPs are designed to take care of 20% of our nutrient issues. The regional projects come in and take up the other, take care of the other 80% of those nutrient issues. This being one of those regional projects. And then DEP, of course, working with municipalities in the BMAP process to improve water quality. We've got a lot of work to do on water quality improvement. You know, now granted, I guess we're about 250 metric tons away from our goal as of the last 5-year update. This project would, you know, go a long ways to getting almost 10% of that remaining need of improvement. The location of this project, when we're just talking project, we're talking NEEP, we're talking water quality improvement. What a great location. You're at the bottom of S-154 drainage basin, which, as you saw in the presentation, is one of the most impaired basins. You know, there for years, the location where part of this project is the S-154C basin. That was the hottest basin, just as recently as several years ago. This completely takes that off the map. You know, the idea or the ability to be able to use lake water coming out of the, or water coming down the Kissimmee River, coming out of Slough Ditch, out of S1, or out of 41A. Again, water bodies that need a lot of improvement, phosphorus reductions. This project has a lot of opportunity, and a project like this is absolutely needed for the MEBAP process. The location is what, you know, is giving me heartburn. I talk about this being personal. I've got my brother lives on one side of this project. I've got cousins that live on the other. I've got high school teachers that live in Lowland next to this project, in the neighborhoods to the west, to the neighborhoods to the east. Got friends, classmates, elected officials, fellow farmers, neighbors I see at breakfast, neighbors I see at wherever. And everybody has an opinion on this project. As it was initially developed, Ms. Reynolds did a great job of walking through the history of this project over the last 4 or 5 years and how it has evolved. lot of concerns for local homeowners when it came to flood protection early on. A lot of things have been improved, have been added to this project. I do just want to walk through a couple of those things. And Mr. Chairman, I'm taking some time here if you would. Okay, thank you. You know, we talk about the monitoring wells, groundwater monitoring wells, the ability for the public to look at groundwater levels today and then have that information going forward, publicly available. You know, it's publicly on our website. We even got nice links. You go through DB Hydro. You know, you work through that process, you can get some nice graphs, and you can see, you can match up those groundwater levels to rainfall from today. That thing gives you groundwater levels every 15 minutes, and it's almost live data coming in. I think every day, by the end of the day, you've got live data. So kudos to the team for getting that done. The buffer areas. You know, as this was originally designed, especially as that smaller footprint, we had this STA right up to the, you know, it was the footprint was right up to the back of some homes, and that absolutely gave people concern, especially homes that were built pre-standards that had you have the finished floor elevation above 18 inches above the road, now 2 foot above the road. And so a lot of concerns about septic tanks. You got a whole community out there that's on septic tank. Buffer areas have been added, and there's a monitoring well in between those areas now. You got buffer areas on Highway 70. You've got, we've added in those buffer areas, most recently, talking about recreation features. There's even some concerns still now on, you know, people don't want, you know, they're concerned about the public coming right up to their back fence line. I think there's still opportunities as we move forward, as we move forward with this project, to still work on those issues. I think there's going to be a lot of buffer, lot of area that has a lot of land that's been cut out of this project that's going to require the district to maintain as natural areas. Cows do a great job. I think there's opportunity for still some cattle grazing in some of those buffer areas that would be compatible with the local neighborhoods. Going forward, I ask that, well, I do want to say that the staff has done a great job in working with the EIP to incorporate these concerns. You know, it was said in some of our public comments, one of the, you know, selling points of this thing back in December of 2021, it's one of the ones, I think I was one of the ones that touted it, was the performance, was the fact that we were, you know, EIP was going to deliver a turnkey project that, you know, required successful operation for 5 out of 7 years. And that was more, I was excited. I mean, I was willing at whatever cost to accept that risk, because there's risk there of making, you know, getting this thing actually working. Lakeside Ranch, we finally, you know, we're finally seeing good results out of Lakeside Ranch. It's taken time, and it's taken district effort, and this is, you know, this is going to take time to grow in, and it's going to take time to get the performance. Spotswood, one of the things you were talking, or Robert, one of the things you mentioned was carrying cost. One of the unique things that the EIP, the landowner's been able to do right now in this high nutrient basin has been able to harvest sod. And sod has pretty good value right now, especially with DOT. So that they've been able to work with those carrying costs, and they've managed, and they've done a good job, and that helps also in this process, removing nutrients out of that basin, exporting it to other basins. ultimately, as we get in, and I kind of heard some questions. I know we're all concerned about the cost of these projects. I had sticker shock when Drew called me last Thursday. Let me know this was going to be on the agenda. We started out with a $280 million kind of proposal back in 2021. Ms. Reynolds did a great job of letting us know that proposal was probably not exactly, or was not really what the district had envisioned, not what I had envisioned. It was more kind of along the lines of one of our dispersed water pay-for-performance type projects, not meant for long-term. So I get that, there were some miscoms in there. And I can admit that it costs more money to design a project that lasts longer. You take the price of this project, it's $616 million, divided by, and just do the simple calculations, divided by 20 metric tons. And go ahead and put it over 50 years. And kind of the expected life of this project before it needs major refurbishment. And you wind up with a figure just on the cost of this project of $280 per metric ton of phosphorus removed. Some of the figures, some of the benchmarks that we've used in other solicitations have been $100 to $150 of phosphorus removal. We've actually, we have funded, it was May several years ago, we funded projects that actually cost closer to $300. I think we even had one project that was $600 per pound of phosphorus removed. But it was a good concentrated area, it was a good project, and we decided to move forward. We had proposals in there, I think, at $1,400 or $1,600 per pound of phosphorus removed. Listening to St. John's and St. John's River Water Management District and Southwest River Water Management District at the Farm Bureau meeting a couple weeks ago. Benchmarks they're using are $275 per pound of phosphorus removed. And I think that was on some of their ag projects, right, Drew? So, there's a wide range when you're looking at the cost or the dollars for removal of the phosphorus. I do agree that there are plenty of opportunities. There's opportunities for doing projects closer to the source. Mr. Bergeron has talked about that, referenced it in the past. That can be done probably a lot more economical. And in order to reach that 250 metric ton reduction that we need today, it's going to take every bit of these projects. You look at opportunities for land like this, 5 miles of river frontage? I hadn't even calculated that. That's probably like 5 miles of C-38 frontage, maybe more than that. These opportunities don't come around. Knowing the previous landowner, hearing some of the history, this property would not have been available to the government. There was, it would have been available. It took EIP, or it took the solicitation, and it took a private company to be able to bring this property to the public for this opportunity. I have said a lot there. I may not have said much. I have probably talked in circles. There's so much more I could say. I will say that this project is one of the things that I missed in saying is this project will enhance flood protection for the local community, and that is something that's being baked into this project. It wasn't in there initially, but it has worked itself in over time, and that has, I think that has helped in my mind, helped with the protection and recognition of the local stakeholders. I will ask, if we move forward, I ask to be kept in the loop as we negotiate out this contract. There's a lot of things. Going back, looking over some of the previous contracts, I've had a lot of comments. Staff, y'all done a great job of incorporating a lot of my comments and a lot of my other fellow board member comments. And I recognize that. And that's where, as we move forward, again, I've said it before, a lot of us have said it before, we've got full faith, Drew, in your team in delivering something, giving you the authority to deliver a final product that checks all the boxes. Again, I am concerned about the cost, and concerned about long-term costs, concerned about O&M. We've got a lot of discussion that I don't think we need to have today, but looking forward, we've got a lot of these projects coming online that are going to require a lot of O&M, and we've got a lot of discussions and a lot of figuring. And Drew, your group has planned. Mr. Chair, I'm going to turn it over now. I'll reserve some other time if I need it.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, I'm going to ask you a question, and Mr. Stanley, then Mr. Spotswood. So I got a quick one for you. I think this won't take a lot of time. Ms. Reynolds, I think I heard you say we're at about $483 million for construction, and I think I heard you say construction delivery language needs to be negotiated, which means to me the $483 million is not firm. It could come down.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stanley?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Ben, I'm glad you spoke first because obviously, we rely on you for some local, insight and everything. And whether it's fair or not, I'm thinking I heard, you played it pretty well, but I'm thinking I heard more positives than negatives.
You think.
I've talked to staff a lot about this too, mostly from the financial perspective. I want to start though with the fact that it doesn't seem to me like there's a lot of question around the value, the necessity of a type of project like this, and the value of its sort of positioning, and the amount of land, the type of land, the location of that land. And to me, as I've been on this board for a while and focused a lot on, or thought a lot about nutrient reduction, I tend to always think of it at the bottom of the system with our SDAs south of the lake. And, this gets us, which is just clearly not as efficient as getting closer to the source. This is not, at the source, but it's much closer to the source. And it certainly addresses a lot of, or helps address a lot of the concerns that we've heard about today from, Caitlin about the lake, and from Newton pointing out the unfortunate recognition of Lake Okeechobee as the most polluted lake in the country. So I think it doesn't seem to me, I'm confident, and I'm not hearing a lot of dissent around the importance of having a project like this. I think we've had a lot of success on this board accelerating projects on timelines. I think this has been an outsider, right? In the sense that it was put in the BMAP in 2020, and we're still sort of at this phase. I think that fog of time was what made it more challenging for me to sort of recollect, what we were talking about at the initial stages, the pricing, and now the cost estimates that we're looking at. And so the doubling of the cost of what we initially approved 4 years ago was what shocked me as I've dug into it. And I think, Jen, your presentation, was really good in terms of solidifying the work I'd done over the past day or so to sort of get myself, or allow a better understanding of why we are where we are. So thank you for that. But obviously, it's the responsibility of this board, among other things, to be a fiduciary to the taxpayers. And so I want to just sort of go down my thinking of the pricing and how it makes sense to me, because it makes more sense now. you know, the easiest factor is the significant increase in size. We're going from 3,400 acres to 4,800 acres. The larger component, the second thing, which is the scope of the project, which you said, I think, and that's important for people to recognize, that when we first looked at this as a pay-for-performance, it was really measured on the success of over a 5-year period. And what I'd hate to be is a board member that approves, you know, a project that is 75%, 70% effective, and have a future board have to, you know, vote on significant budget approval to add, to improve, to adjust, et cetera. So I think it's smart to start, you know, at these projects with an eye towards long-term effectiveness. And like we do with all of our projects, I think it's important for people now to recognize that we're trying to design this to a 50-year timeframe. The leveled slopes, or the leveled cells versus the slope cells, the change in the elevation, I expect, you know, Ron and Charlie can tell us this, but I would imagine that that adds significant costs. The natural treatment versus, you know, a hybrid sort of innovative technology, which, you know, could be chemical oriented. The increase in CFS capacity and the, you know, proportional processing, and then other significant adjustments. So what I've heard in terms of, you know, the risk to the community is a lot of concern around flooding. It seems to me like we've heard that, we've adjusted the planning, and and Ben, you said it, it seems to me like we're in a better, that area is in a better position with this put into place. So, so I guess where I am is that, you know, as opposed to, you know, doing this project okay, let's do it right. Let's not bring it back. We've had cases like this in the past, right? It's not fun, where we have to bring it back. And I think certainly from a land cost, we've got a very reasonable land cost. And it sounds like, thank you for the comps, in terms of per unit cost of treatment of chemicals, we've got an okay cost. I guess where I am now is that, you know, in talking to folks involved in this project, there still remains to be, I don't like these not to exceed numbers because they always become the number, and then there's change orders that increase the number. And so what I'm hearing is that you guys don't want to come back to the board, so you want a number a lot. So you want a number that sort of satisfies and gives you a little bit of flexibility. In discussing this project with folks, it seems to me like there's some potential embedded or there's some potential significant savings that we can work on in terms of construction costs or other matters. So I think it would, in terms of where I am is in terms of the resolution is, you know, authorizing this not to exceed, but really relying on you guys, on staff, on EIP and on Phillips and Jordan to find areas and to negotiate areas where we can reduce the cost. I think that's going to be really important. And so, you know, you guys do this with every project, but I just, you know, the initial shock of the doubling of price, I think I've gotten comfortable with it, but it seems to me like there's some things that we can do to drive efficiencies, and that will be really important. So I'd love to sort of give direction to staff to do your darndest to, you know, negotiate this not to the 615, but significantly less, and get a good quality project, because we've got a great opportunity in this area. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Steinle. Mr. Spotswood?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll reiterate Jay's comments. Ben, thanks for taking the laboring oar and understanding local input, and it's really, really important to make sure we're working with the stakeholders. It's been said, but the location seems to be optimal for the S154 and S154C basin in order for us to meet our nutrient reduction goals over the long term. These projects are expensive. Quite frankly, I've seen projects that didn't change in size or scope over the last 5 or 6 years double in cost. Construction costs have just gone through the roof, and I don't think that's going to change. And so another element that I wrestled with here is, if you don't do this, what are the opportunity costs, both in terms of not getting the nutrient reduction starting in 2030, and also the increase in costs of needing to find another project, if one's even available in this basin. So from a location perspective, I've kind of heard, I think we're settled. This is an area we need to try and get a project done. I did have a question real quick for Jennifer. If we approve the amount not to exceed, will the final construction contract come back before the board?
The final construction contract would not need to come back before the board.
Okay.
We would be able to negotiate and enter into the contract based on the resolution that you have before you today.
Okay, so similar to Ben, would like to be kept up to speed in how that process goes. I do think, based on what I've seen, the comment was just made, that this is a great opportunity for us to acquire this land at a reasonable price. We've got an appraisal on it, and also, I don't know if it was said, but DEP is paying for this. There's a grant from DEP to pay for the acquisition of this land. It's not coming from district funds. I also, as part of the cost increase, I am really happy to hear, Jennifer, that you and your team really leaned into making sure that we design this project that is going to minimize the O&M costs and long-term costs. I think that's something that we're going to struggle with a lot over the coming years with infrastructure we have now, and certainly should be conscious about stuff we're building now and making sure we're maximizing our value and return on that. My last comment, Ben, thanks for doing some of the math on the total cost per metric ton of removal. I was kind of trying to head that way and had some questions. So, as it stands, coming in kind of in the middle range, as I understand you, it seems pretty reasonable. So, all in all, Jennifer and staff, hats off to you. I think you guys have done a really good job keeping this project going and getting into place. I think it can be successful. So that's all the comments I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Spotswood. Does anyone else have comments? All right.
One question.
Mr. Bergeron, then Mr. Butler.
I kind of, and I'll try to be brief, I have the same concerns I heard from Ben. I certainly respect his opinion, and as well as Jay's opinion. Ben living in this area and understanding the concerns of the surrounding neighborhoods, which I think at the end of the day we could develop and design to make sure safety and welfare to the surrounding. I think we can accomplish that. I do have quite a bit of concern about the increase in cost, and especially on a job of this nature, where as a civil engineering construction and myself for over 60 years, most of this work doesn't bring in outside imported material. It's all internal. A lot of our inflation and cost of construction deals with, imports. Here, 90% of what you're building other than the pump station is internal. And I do have a serious concern about the cost. What is it, 600 million? We started out at 300 million. I think the location is good. I think we can protect the surrounding areas, but I don't understand how that cost can increase that much. And I think you got to do some value engineering, cost versus benefit, before I'd be comfortable. I think, you know, we're all under a lot of pressure, and I know our staff's done a tremendous job. And we're in a position where it's important that we address quality of water, but there's got to be economics that make economical sense at the end of the day. And this doesn't look, the cost just seems to be extremely high. So I mean, I have some concerns, not much different than Ben or Jay, until we can get a cost that makes sense and making sure that design protects the surrounding residents. And I do know that cost is much better closer to the location as well. So that's where I stand today.
Thanks, Mr. Bergeron. Mr. Butler?
One of the things, just a quick question here, one of the things that came out in comment, it's something I just haven't considered yet. But the gates down, the discharge gates on the C-38, who operates those? Who owns those? Is that the Corps that's in the Herbert Hoover Dike there? But is that Corps, and is that,
Yeah, so
explain some of that.
They're part of the CNSF system as part of the Herbert Hoover Dike. And so right now, those gates don't operate very often. As with this project, we would see those gates operate more. They would provide better flood protection under the operation in conjunction with the project. And so as the CNSF project, the Water Management District is responsible for O&M of the CNSF project. And so refurbishments, major refurbishments of these structures would come to our responsibility. We could seek federal funding, but inherently they're part of our O&M responsibility.
And those structures have been there for a while, and I know we've got aging infrastructure.
Yep.
I'm sure they're on a list. I mean, due to be refurbished, they're probably just not, probably haven't been on the most priority list.
Correct.
Yeah.
Under the CNSF authority, there isn't cost share on rebuilding these structures.
That's all on to us.
It's on us.
It's all
yeah.
on us.
The
Go ahead.
The C-44, how large was that? Was that?
The C-44 reservoir? In terms of size or in terms of cost?
Acreage?
The acreage is
Are you talking about the reservoir or the STA?
the STA or?
Yeah.
The STA is 6,400 acres, the reservoir is 3,500, something like that.
The STA was 6,000 acres,
Yeah.
Just over
6.5.
6,000 acres.
and this is 4,800 acres.
Correct.
And I think the cost of construction of that was about, well, it started out at 105 million, and then I think it ended up somewhere around about 150 million.
Pre-COVID. Before COVID.
Pre 2020.
But I think the thing that I've seen in construction cost on projects that I've been involved in, where you don't have a lot of imported materials, there's a lot of difference because you're creating most of your materials on site, except for the pump station and stuff of that nature. So I have
So,
quite a
Mr.
bit of
Bergeron,
concerns about the,
the total amount you're talking about here is not just construction, so it's not just a construction bid. This includes land acquisition, design, engineering it includes everything associated with it. The construction cost for the STA itself, you'll still think it's expensive, right? I'm not saying, but it's not 615, it's 480 million, right? And that's where, working with Phillips and Jordan and companies, we think we can bring that number down.
so the 615 includes the land purchase and the
Planning and design is 82 million of that.
Yeah, I
It's
see that.
13%. So,
Yeah.
so it's significant. So what I'm hearing is that everyone's getting a little bit caught up in the 483 million, the 78%, that's construction costs, which is a number that's on the wall, but no one really knows if it's the number. And I think I definitely agree with what Mr. Steinley said, where the not to exceed is like closet space. Sometimes you just end up, if you have it, you're going to build to it. So maybe we bring the not to exceed number down. And I don't know if that causes you heartburn. I don't know if that helps you, but that might be something that we want to think about. And I don't know how much wiggle room you're thinking, Drew, there is in the 483
I'm
million.
not ready to sit in the board meeting and try to figure out how to bring that down.
All right, well, you may not get your votes, but
I understand. Yeah, I want to make a commitment to y'all that we will bring the final contract down, and anybody who wants the details of that final contract, we will share that with you. And every contract I have been engaged in and had a board member very interested in, we have absolutely taken those comments very seriously and worked them into the contract, right? So I think this is one of those projects that it fits under the umbrella of Achieve More Now. And so we are trying to just get this under construction as quickly as possible. And so, but we are going to negotiate a good contract and bring it down and just keep you posted on that.
Mr. Steinley?
No, Drew, I appreciate what you just said, and I don't know if it would, make people more comfortable to, in these resolutions, it's I would read it if I didn't know as an authorization to spend 615 million, which maybe it is, but really what it is an authorization to negotiate a contract with a maximum. So if you can, can you sort of memorialize somehow the fact that staff is going to do a ton of work and believes that there are significant savings? I don't know if that would make people comfortable.
Mr. Bergeron?
Not sure how to.
well,
And then Mr. Spotswood.
I think that you could kind of do an analysis, it's sort of like, once you have certain quantities of scope of work and look at historical costs within the last 3 years, be pretty easy to see where the construction costs should be.
Absolutely. And we did an independent cost estimate, and so we have quantities and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff that we will bring to the table.
Yeah, I've done that a lot with DOT, because all of those, I'm sure all of our cost of construction, we have historical costs based
Yep, we
upon
do.
the scope of work and where you're justifying a reasonable cost. The land part of it seems reasonable.
Very.
It's just the construction cost seems outrageous.
I can tell you, if I tried to, knowing what the public knows now, and government tried to buy this land, it would not be sold to us for appraised value.
Ms. Reynolds and then Mr. Spotswood.
So, Mr. Bergeron, I can talk to the cost estimate that we did on this project. So I mentioned that we had a design workshop with the designer, with EIP and Brown and Caldwell and P&J, about 3 weeks ago and went through the design and then compared that to our cost estimate. And our cost estimate came out between 420 million and 450 million is what we estimated the construction cost. During that meeting that we had with them about 3 weeks ago, there's about $58 million of construction items that we need to negotiate. We need to understand better with them in order to get more clarity on that cost estimate. And what would be part of the negotiation here would be how that makes sense, and making sure that as all the things that need to be incorporated as part of the base price of the cost is included in the base price, because they're requirements in order for the project to operate. And so just as an example, one of those items would be manatee gates. So on a couple of the structures, we believe that manatee gates will be required as a permit requirement. Those should be included in the price of construction, not an optional item that should be tacked on to the price. And so in our cost estimate, that would be included in the cost estimate. In EIP's original price proposal, those were additional items that needed to be negotiated, right? And so how that falls out in our negotiation will help us to negotiate a lower price for the overall project. And so we think that there's, potentially about $58 million worth of negotiating space in the construction cost.
Mr. Spotswood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ron beat me to it. I was going to ask Jennifer to walk through their view on the construction pricing. There seems to be a lot of pump infrastructure, and maybe kind of more in this project than I've seen in other STAs. Of that $450 million roughly, how much of that is for pump and infrastructure, not, moving dirt? And I think that might help, us understand a little bit kind of what's driving a lot of the cost here.
So I don't have all of the structures at the top of my head for the cost estimate. The pump station is about $100 million on its own. And then we have the sag culvert. That's a significant driver. You might remember in STA 1 West Expansion 2, that had a similar type structure that really drove up the price of that expansion. That was one of the expansions that was an expensive structural component that drove up the price of that project, for example. And then there are multiple structures that we talked about in the HHD. Those types of structures aren't always part of our stormwater treatment area designs. And so I don't know the costs of those in our cost estimate. Lucene, if you want to. So Lucene's estimating about 30 to 40 million for each one of those structures, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those structures incorporated here. So that's another almost $100 million for those structures.
Thanks for that. And I'm sorry, I don't recall the name of them, but the water control structures that are currently operated by the Army Corps are which structures again?
So they're not operated by the Corps, they are operated by the district, and it's S-154
and 154C.
Yeah.
And there's no structure here that we could move forward that would give us, maybe some flexibility for cost share on that, or other sources of, no, I assume so, but, as I've looked through this, it dawned on me that a significant amount of this construction cost is related to pump infrastructure and other that I think the district's got a pretty good handle on. So a breakdown of those next time we meet and follow up would be helpful for me.
Absolutely.
Mr. Steinle?
It sounds to me like there's significant, potential savings you guys can work on, and you've proven in the past that you can do it. I'd like to make a motion to, are we doing it individually for?
We're going to do 2 different votes. There's going to be one for one and then one for the B, which is.
Make a motion on the first.
Thank you. That's 2025-0912. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Spotswood. Is there further discussion? I'm going to call the question. Mr. Spotswood?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Hurley, thank you. Forgot your name for just a second. Colonel Roman?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously, and I need a motion for Resolution 2025-0913 and Resolution 2025-0914.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call that question. Mr. Spotswood?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Steinle?
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Colonel Roman?
Yes.
And Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Thanks. That passes unanimously also. Thank you, Ms. Reynolds, very much for the presentation. We'll move now to technical reports with Mr. Mitnick and Ms. Armstrong.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Cassandra and I are going to give you the speed round of the water conditions report because I know we have a hard start for the budget meeting, and I'm sure folks want to get up and stretch their legs before that. So I'm just going to jump to, back up to here. Upper chain of lakes, with all the rains that they've been experiencing, you can see that they're all at their regulation schedule for this time of year. A lot of those rains in August and the beginning of September have brought it up. We're going to continue to manage each of the lakes, Toho, West Toho, and Kissimmee, to continue to rise up to their winter pools by November 1st. So we have sufficient water to be able to supply the restored reaches of the Kissimmee River throughout the upcoming dry season. Having said that, you can already see that with the river between August and now, the increase in flow, now we're up to about that 3,700 cubic feet per second there. A lot of the floodplain has been inundated. You see a lot of those dark blues, and we have water flowing across the floodplain. So jumping down to how water is moved around, you can see inflows to Lake Okeechobee. So far this water year is about 600,000 acre feet, which is about 1.5 feet of water, with close to 1/2 foot of that has come in just in the last month, when you sort of look right here at that 238,000 acre feet. Over on the west coast, you can see about a little less than 400,000 acre feet of water have been moved to the Caloosahatchee estuary. This roughly 17,000 acre feet that came from Lake Okeechobee, that was very early on in the wet season, prior to some of the rain starting. So you're talking back in May timeframe, when we were still delivering water from the lake down to the Caloosahatchee. You can see there's been about 33,000 acre feet for water supply going to the Caloosahatchee Basin. Over on the east coast, there hasn't been any water coming out of the C-44 basin moving to the estuary. You can see all of that water has gone back into Lake Okeechobee. That's this 64,000 acre feet. So right now, the C-44 basin is flowing back into Lake Okeechobee to increase lake levels, which is part of that 238,000 acre feet that you see having come into Lake Okeechobee in the last month. Upper East Coast, C-23-24 basins have started discharging just over 100,000 acre feet to the estuary, and then about the 65,000 acre feet going to Indian River Lagoon around Fort Pierce from the C-25 basin. For projections on Lake Okeechobee, this is the conditional position analysis that we use. Typically, I always focus in on that 50% line. You can see as by the time we get to roughly the end of the wet season there to November, you've got about a 50-50 shot of Lake Okeechobee getting at or below 13.5 feet as we exit this wet season. We'll see where we end up, but to bound it, you've got 25th percentile down there at 13 feet and 75th percentile up there at 14 feet. So that's sort of the range that the climate is dictating for us as we look to where we're going to exit the wet season. With that, Cassandra?
So we have had, over the past month, about 139,000 acre feet coming in, 29,000 acre feet going out, and rainfall is just slightly ahead of evapotranspiration by about 20,000 acre feet. And we did see a little bit of flow to the Caloosahatchee, as was mentioned, as well as to the flow to the south. So overall, we've seen about 1/2 foot coming onto the lake. And we are right in the middle of the recovery envelope, which is where we want to be. And just recently, due to recent rains, we have actually had a increasing rate, which is a little higher than we want to see for the SAV recovery that we've had. But we're still in a really good position on that, and we are hoping to be around 14 and a half feet in GVD by the end of this water year. Now, for some biology, we are starting to see the temperatures come down. They've stabilized over the past couple of weeks, and they're now on average below 30 degrees centigrade, which is a key marker for algae. So that is good, and that means we're starting to come out of the high-risk zone for algal blooms on the lake. We've still seen a lot of mid-range winds on the lake, which is providing a lot of mixing, especially in the middle of the lake, also helping with the algae that we are getting. However, we have seen some calm days, and when we have calm days, that means that the algae can kind of move back up towards the surface. So we still do see some activity. At the very top graph, it is our algal biomass, and these last two samples are August. And what you can see is that they rose up pretty significantly compared to the previous sampling events. And at the same time, the dissolved inorganic nitrogen kind of cratered. So they used what was available to do that little bump in biomass. So there's very little DIN left in the lake at this point in time. And for turbidity, it's still pretty low. However, I did want to point out to you the pelagic zone. Remember that well-mixed lake? We're still seeing a little higher turbidity at this time of year than we have seen in previous years at this time. So and that's due to those winds. So as I said, August was a bump in our biomass of algae on the lake, and those are the satellite images over here. You can see they're well covered in green, and some have some yellows and reds, and we have since cleared out. So the middle of the lake is not looking like it has a high potential. There's a little bit of accumulation due to wind over here near S308, and you see a little yellow spot, and we're also with that backflow that was coming in through the C44 canal is probably driving a little bit of that algal bloom right there. But for the most part, we have seen what we are going to see for this algal season. And lastly, on algae, we did have a sampling event in early September, and we don't have the biomass data back yet, but we do have the toxins. And so I want to draw your attention to the map and the little pink squares. The pink squares are where we had toxins above detection but below the recreational levels for that particular toxin. So we've got a mixed bag of who's out there. As you can see from the chart over here, there is a lot of microcystis, but there's a lot of other stuff as well, and they each have their own recreational thresholds. So that's what we're showing here in the pink, is everything is below those recreational thresholds. And promised you that we would give you the results of the SAV surveys on the lake, and we finally have them. And the official number for the year is 28,000 acre feet, which is a significant increase from last year. You can see here on this graph how we did the previous years and where we are now. It's a nice mix, and it's very similar to 2019, where we had very similar water level conditions going into this growing season for SAV. So we are mostly seeing Vallisneria. We're seeing a little less of the vascular plants than we want. And for the plantings that were done in Fish Eating Bay, we are starting to see some sprigs spread out even further past what was planted. So there is some natural recruitment going on there. And we're hoping that with the slow rise in the lake elevation, those will have an opportunity to take root and be able to hold out through the winter.
Cassandra, what conditions do we need to if you could go back one, to avoid the the 2019 where you had an improvement and then you had a gradual shifting? I mean, I guess it's rhetorical. You need lower lake levels.
We need a lower rate of rise.
Okay.
So that's the main.
Lower rate of rise.
Rate of rise is the thing.
It will tolerate the higher lake, but a lower rate of rise.
Right. So what you're wanting to do is give the grass time to grow. So as it grows, it can tolerate higher and higher levels, but it just needs that time to actually grow up. And that will, so you can get to a higher lake level by the end of the year. You just need to do it slowly so that the grass can grow, keep up with the water levels. Okay, moving on to the estuaries in St. Lucie. We are at about 1,000 CFS coming into the estuary over the past week. Almost all of that came from the St. Lucie basins, the watershed. And we have not seen a pretty significant change in the salinities over the past month. You can see the salinity gradients between August and September look fairly similar. And with that, you can also see, there we go, over here that the salinities are pretty stable at the US 1 bridge, and they're right in the middle of the salinity optimum envelope for oysters. And here's our oyster data for that. We are still seeing recruitment numbers. These numbers came from early August, so they mostly represent July recruitment. And we're still seeing that the last numbers were at 0.3 spat per shell at the Rio station. And that's following the very large 17.7 that we saw back in June. So not unusual that it would have that drop. And it's, we also finished our seagrass surveys in the estuary, and the little blue dots, the size of the dot tells you how much the percent cover was for that station. And the pictures on the right are the different types of species that we would expect in there. Over this season, we saw about 2.5% cover for each of the stations on average, which is a little better than we had last year, so that's good, but it is still pretty low in general. But we are at least on the right track for recovery of SAV in that estuary. Moving on to the Caloosahatchee. We got over 3,000 CFS going to the Caloosahatchee, and most of that was from the C43 basin. And the salinities over there have actually changed dramatically due to a lot of the rain that they've had on the west coast. And you can see the salinity gradient between August 10th and September 8th is significantly, the low salinity has moved significantly down the river towards the mouth. And that is also apparent in our salinity metrics for oysters. You can see each one of the salinities at the different stations has declined. And what that has done is put Cape Coral in the lower stress range. It's too fresh. And then it's also put Shell Point and Sanibel now in the optimum range, and they haven't been there in quite a while. And so with that, we've got a significant bump in our oyster recruitment at Iona Cove and Bird Island. So these numbers were collected in mid to end of August, so they're mostly reflecting August recruitment numbers. And you can see we had quite a big jump up for those numbers. And the seagrass in the Caloosahatchee, all those open circles that you see are zeros. We have a few, I think there's one in segment A, which is the red dot towards the S79 structure, and then the pink dot is segment C down towards Cape Coral, but that's pretty much it for those segments, so not doing very well for the more freshwater-oriented seagrasses. But what you can see in St. Carlos Bay is that we've got a lot of percent cover going on there. So we actually saw an increase in that area in the SAV compared to last year, whereas all of the other areas was a decline.
All right, so looking at how water has moved around the southern portion of the system so far, you can see inflows to the water conservation areas have been right around 350,000 acre feet. That's with the drier weather that we have been experiencing. You would reasonably expect that those inflows would be lower than what we've seen in some of the previous years. Into Everglades National Park, just less than 200,000 acre feet, the majority of which was delivered there through Northeast Shark River Slough, inclusive of some of that return seepage, both there at 356 and then across the South Dade conveyance system in this 88,000 acre feet. By far, the vast majority of the runoff has been, as you would expect, on the urbanized areas along the lower East Coast. A little bit more than 500,000 acre feet coming off of those areas going into the Intercoastal Waterway and then Florida Bay farther to the south. Looking at the stormwater treatment areas, you can see with the drier weather and the lack of rainfall, there's only been about 315,000 acre feet processed through the stormwater treatment areas. So reasonably, you would expect that all of the stormwater treatment areas are at or near their target depths here, with the exception of STA 3-4, because you can see STA 3-4 of that 315,000 acre feet that has been processed through the stormwater treatment areas. The majority of that has gone through STA 3-4. And it's, as you can see down here on the bottom, it's having remarkable performance with producing 12 part per billion water, even given that it's taken the majority of the flows that have been moved down through the system. So that's reflective in the water depth maps. All of the STAs have significant amounts of water in them, given the rains that we've just recently experienced the end of August and the beginning of September. STA 1 East, you can see this central flowway is still offline for construction, and that's why those deep reds show up there. In the southern portion of the system, you see all the rainfall up here in the upper right-hand corner with Conservation Area 1. It had been well below its schedule, and it was kind of steady, but some of those rains are starting to push levels up in Conservation Area 1 now. Ideally, you want Area 1 to get there to the top of its regulation schedule, so we'll see what the future rains bring for us. But Area 2 has been tracking pretty nicely. It's above schedule, but it's in a decent place right now for this time of year compared to past years where it was even higher than it is today. Area 3-4 has been relatively steady. Conservation Area 3A, not 3-4, has been relatively steady, but it's still below its schedule. Got a significant amount of rain just recently. For anybody who was at the groundbreaking yesterday, you saw it firsthand as those storm clouds rolled over the conservation area to contribute to some of that slight tick up that you'll see tomorrow in the graphic in Conservation Area 3. This is also the time of year that I remind the board that we'll move into some of the procedural operations in South Dade to facilitate some of the operations by the landowners down in that area, and we'll work in coordination with them over the next several months to be able to lower some of those canal levels and support their activities. With that, Cassandra will talk about Everglades.
So the Everglades are getting a lot wetter. As you can see, we've got a lot more blue on the map than we had in the previous month. We still do have a few dry areas, and some of the areas are wet in just certain portions of it. So Water Conservation Area 1, the north area is still a little dry. Water Conservation Area 2, again, north area is still a little dry. And Tamiami Trail. However, the hydrologic conductivity to the bay from the sloughs has improved dramatically, including at Lossman Slough, which now has a lot of blues in it, so we're getting there. And with that, we're starting to see some really good ascension rates. So that's the very last column on the left-hand table. You see all the greens. We do have a few areas where there were recession rates that are in the red on the lower ones, but then we have one ascension rate that was really high up in Water Conservation Area 1 at the 1.9 gauge. The water depths are all coming up, but they are still pretty low for this time of year, and there is still concern about prey production in the middle of the Everglades for next year. We're not quite seeing the level of water that we want in order to produce those crayfish and fish and things like that that the wading birds will need for next year's nesting season. And so now to talk more about rain. We got a lot of rain in the Keys area and over Florida Bay, which was really good. As you remember from previous presentations, I was very concerned about the hypersalinity conditions that we had been receiving in the bay. Well, that radar right there fixed that. So here's a model map of the salinities in the area. The one on the left is previous conditions, and those pink boxes were the hypersalinity zones, and then the green boxes, it was pretty high salinity, it just wasn't hypersalinity. As you can see from the model on the right, those pink boxes are now gone, and so we are back in normal conditions. It's still pretty saline though, so we are at the upper interquartile range for each of the regions, but we are below hypersalinity in all of the regions, which is a good thing. And flow has increased at the Taylor Slough. Taylor Slough. So no concerns for the MFL at this point.
All right, so looking at the Climate Prediction Center and what it has for the future forecast, the month of September is likely going to finish above. You can already see those rains, or heard them earlier today during the meeting. But as we move through the successive 3-month windows that they use, we'll gradually shift to equal chances, and then by the time we get out into the November, December, January timeframe, it's leaning more below average rainfalls. That's indicative of what the forecast is calling for right now is a weak La Nina type condition, which is below average rainfall. I'll remind you at this time last year, we had a similar forecast for a weak La Nina. Then it actually turned out to be more of a moderate La Nina and a little bit drier than what was originally forecasted. So the jury's still out. We're going to still keep our eye on it. But over the next couple days, today, you heard the rains in the background. Tomorrow it's going to have some rains moving through the area in the district. But then we'll have a couple days of drier weather until out in week 2, it shifts back to more near normal or above normal rainfall. Right now, our operational mindset is to conserve water within the system and hold on to as much as we can of it, because we don't know where we're gonna exit the wet season just yet, and be able to maintain those supplies within the system to be able to sustain us through the upcoming dry season, and be able to provide for all of the resources and the competing needs on the system throughout the rest of the dry season. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you both. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Mitnick or Ms. Armstrong? All right, thanks. Go now to Ms. Heater, the monthly financial report.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The monthly financial report that was posted on the Budget and Finance website is through the month of July. Thus far, we've collected over $1 billion in new revenue, and we've expended $984 million. Comparing July of 2025 to last July of 2024, we collected $124 million more, or 13%, in revenues, and expended $181 million, or 23% more. The month of July, so from June to July of this year, we collected $35 million of additional revenue, and we spent $92 million. 90% of the $92 million, or $83 million, was expended on restoration and O&M, 5%, or $4 million, on science and monitoring, 3%, or $3 million, on management, administration, outreach, and 2%, or $2 million, on regulation. The $1 billion in revenue collection is comprised of $665 million from intergovernmental, mostly state revenues, $376 million from ad valorem, and the remaining $55 million from our investment earnings, license, permit fees, leases, sale of district property, and self-insurance. We've expended and obligated 68% of the budget, and we're spending on average about $98 million per month. Last July, we were on average of about $80 million per month, so a little more this year. So that concludes my report through the month of July.
Thanks, Ms. Heater. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Thank you. We'll move now to our final general public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll hear from Diamond Bergeron.
Bergeron. I'm speaking on behalf of the Bergeron Everglades Foundation. I would just like to commend the district, the state of Florida, and all of your partners for yesterday's groundbreaking of the Blue Shanty Flowway. I regret that I couldn't be there. This project is a major step forward for Everglades restoration and for everyone who depends on clean, reliable water. My dad, Alligator Ron Bergeron, has championed the need to expedite the Blue Shanty Flowway for many years. I'd argue that no one has said the words Blue Shanty Flowway more than my dad, and for good reason. To see it finally moving from vision to reality is deeply meaningful to us and a moment of true hope for the Everglades. By taking the lead, the district is accelerating a project that will send more clean water south, reconnecting the Everglades to Florida Bay, nourishing wildlife, and safeguarding drinking water for millions. On behalf of our foundation and my family, thank you for your bold leadership. We are elated to see this day and stand ready to support you every step of the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Bergeron. Mr. Chairman, we don't have any additional public comment.
Would it be possible I didn't think to fill out a card?
Yes, Mr. Hunt.
Thanks again. I know the last SDA has been passed, but I want to get some more comments on it. EIP is a investment advisor registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. It's a private equity firm. Mr. Steinley, I think, said at one of the meetings they're an investment company, buy low, sell high. So I think that explains why the cost is so high. This process has been littered with lies and half-truths that came from EIP. Very deceptive. And I want to share one with you now. This is just one of many examples. There's not time, but earlier this year, I saw a gentleman from Phillips and Jordan talking about the Southland project. And he said, you know, we can even work out helping you cover the cost. And then he said, we're even helping to cover the cost on that project north of the lake, which I'm all but certain is this STA. What he didn't tell is, based on the information that's available, under the pay-for-performance contract, they would spend up to $1 million to run it for a year and then get paid something in the neighborhood of $24 million. So that's not transparent whatsoever. And I talked about this at the meeting. You know, there's just been one half-truth after another with this company and this project. And half-truths are more insidious than a whole lie, because you can't refute them. You have to have the time and energy to tell the rest of the story, the rest of the truth, to put it in context. In May of 2024, you know, we hear comments about them working with the county and working with the stakeholders. In May of 2024, we were at the Stewart meeting, and you heard the county assistant administrator saying that they're not responsive, they're not answering the calls, they're not talking to them. And as it turns out, at that Stewart meeting, when we broke for lunch and I loitered around talking with some staff, turns out the two people from EIP were hiding in the back of the meeting. And so I know they don't want to talk to me. I don't trust anything they tell me, but you think they might pick up the cell phone and text and say, hey, Richard, we're at the meeting, let's talk over lunch. They didn't do it. I said at the meeting last night, I've described this company. They have 18 employees according to their website, and maybe a few more under these subsidiary projects. But I told a small group, I said, this is like you're doing business with the Wizard of Phosphorus, and pay no attention to the financial engineer behind the curtain. That's what this company is. And everybody laughed, but I was serious.
Please wrap up your comments.
So this thing has kind of gotten framed. We talk about this, we complain about this stuff, and then you come in and kind of schleff it off and say, well, you know, these private equity company, they're not used to this. So you're kind of framing it a good cop, bad cop. And
please wrap up your comments,
I don't
Mr.
accept
Hunt.
that. That might be fine in law enforcement when you have a bad guy, but we're not the bad guys. We're the stakeholders, and you can do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. We have no additional public comment, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. We'll go now to final board comment. I'll start with you, Mr. Hurley.
I don't have anything.
Mr. Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to follow up after our vote on the Lower Kissimmee Basin STA and discussion. I failed to give it in my remarks, and it just really wasn't the time, but I do want to thank, got a lot of thanks for along the way here. First of all, I want to thank the local stakeholders for their engagement in this process. Granted, this is a project that is close to home for all of them, but it's through their engagement that this project has been improved. And if not for that, we may not have gotten some of the changes made that were warranted. Right down to Scott, and I appreciate your engagement. Scott and I have sparred a lot, and I say sparred. We've agreed on a lot of things too, and but there have been a lot of folks that have been a part of this, and that's the case with all these projects. And I appreciate the district in this case taking the lead on comms because it was needed. We've learned some lessons through this process, and it's been some tough lessons. We've learned some good lessons, but I just wanted to really give a shout out to all of the individual stakeholders that have been engaged through the process, and I ask they continue to be engaged. I will absolutely be engaged through the process. It sounds like as well as my fellow board members, and kudos to all of y'all for the work that you put into to everything with the district. Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Butler. Mr. Steinle.
No comment.
Mr. Bergeron.
I always have a comment, you know that. No, great meeting. Like I say all the time, it's an honor to sit with all my fellow board members, and what an honor for all of us to make a difference for future generations. This journey of water is the life of Florida, from sawgrass to seagrass. And what a responsibility we have, and what a great staff that we have. Even you too, Drew. I really mean that. I mean, there's so much that we do, this board and this agency, to make sure that future generations, like my daughter here, which I'm a very proud alligator daddy, okay, for the next generation to learn and have a voice for 22 million people that live in this state, and it's I'm really proud of my daughter. And I just want to say that the Blue Shanty, I'm so excited, and I think we need to, there's other parts of the Blue Shanty that I think we need to accelerate, and with the Everglades Task Force, Drew, I think that's the last piece of the moving this water south, and that's all we hear constantly. And that, when you look at over $1 billion of infrastructure that we've built over the past 25 years, that's Blue Shanty is the last piece to let that 2.5 million acre feet of water flow south, which will benefit the global system all the way from Boggy Creek below Orlando. And so it's exciting to me that we're on the threshold of that road being finished March of next year. I got to say, Drew and myself, every couple of months, we're working with our 4 federal partners, and we have 4 state agencies: DOT, DEP, FWC, and South Florida Water Management. to make sure that the connection down at the trail happens. And it's exciting because the biggest benefit that we've ever seen from 2000 to 2025 is when that water is flowing beyond the Tamiami Trail. And we're getting close, and it's exciting. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's an honor to sit with all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. Mr. Spotswood.
Nothing for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Roman.
Nothing further.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just real quick, I didn't talk earlier before we voted on the STA because I didn't want to repeat what all my colleagues have said. But just real quickly, I want to give a great shout out to Jennifer and her whole team. This has been it's a very important project that solves a lot of the issues that we have been talking about for many years. To Lucene and John and everybody to make sure, and you made sure that this is going to be constructed with the specs, and we've learned from our past mistakes. And yes, it's going to be a little more expensive, but hopefully we don't have to go back in 5 or 10 years and have to redo it the way we've had to do in some of the other ones. And most importantly, the construction costs. Those of us that live in the construction world, we've almost become numb to these price increases every day. And whether you're building a project like this, whether you're building an office building, whether you're building a house, whether you're going out and you're buying a refrigerator, for crying out loud, the price increases that we're seeing on a daily basis are absolutely horrendous, and it's just we don't know what to do anymore. Again, really, I personally I've become numb to it, and so while it's tough to swallow, and Mr. Bergeron made a great point that yes, a lot of this stuff is internal. And has to do with earthwork, but even employees, we all know our employees, everybody's costing quite a bit more than they were costing 3 or 4 years ago. So again, because of all these things that they have to deal with, Jennifer Reynolds, thank you for what you do. I know you make sure you get public involvement, and so thank you. This is a very, very important project to the mission that we are all part of. And thank you, Ben, for your words. It's very important to hear from the local rep. So thank you. That's all.
Thanks very much, Ms. Martinez, for your perspective there. Appreciate it. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to have our public hearing on fiscal year 2025-26 tentative ad valorem millage rates, non-ad valorem tax rolls, and tentative budget today at 5:15, which is like 6 minutes from now. If you're joining us this meeting by Zoom, you'll be able to use the same link. The link is also posted on the district's website, and this meeting is adjourned.